All right.
Welcome, everybody. This is the trade deadline stream we've been hyping up for I think about 2 or 3 weeks now. A
hmm
lot's happened. But first of all, welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host Yarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
We appreciate all the support. We appreciate everybody who's in here early. There were some moves last night that weren't, earth shattering or anything, including, Xavier Tillman to the Pistons, some smaller names as well.
Celtics.
I think you said what?
Celtics. He went to the
Celtics,
Celtics.
excuse me. And then also Monte Morris to the Timberwolves, which is something that we kind of talked about prior to in our trade deadline video. So, there were some small guys moved. And then earlier today, kind of going through the litany, there's a bunch of moves that we need to talk about. But
Yeah.
first of all, don't forget to like and subscribe. And once again, we appreciate everybody who came through to the stream this early. We'll be streaming from around this time to maybe around 3-ish or a little bit after 3, depending on what kind of other moves are made. So, without
Yeah.
further ado, we might as well kick off talking about some other moves.
Yeah. So, I guess we'll go through kind of like, the trades as they've come in so far. We'll start off, like you said, with the ones from yesterday. The first one, like you said, the earth shattering one was Simone Fontecchio going to the Pistons for Kevin Knox in a 2024 second round pick, right? Fontecchio, he's a rotational guy for the Jazz, right? Kind of like a shooting forward. He can play a little bit of defense. Wasn't great as a rookie, but in his second year, he's been a lot better. So I like it for Detroit because, again, it's another guy, that you're getting that is productive. They just picked up a win against the Kings last night without Cade Cunningham. It was a double-digit victory, actually. So he'll be, added to that squad, add a little bit more shooting. Utah, I guess it's for the second round pick. But Kevin Knox, I doubt he'll do a whole lot in Utah, but we'll see. And then the next one was the Xavier Tillman one, as you mentioned, right? Xavier Tillman Sr. from the Grizzlies going to the Celtics for 2 second round picks, right? So obviously adding to that big man depth, in Boston, which again is a pretty cheap deal, right? A solid player because, he was part of that Grizzlies team in the playoffs, right, against the Lakers, right? It was the shorthanded, team where they didn't really have a lot of bigs, but I actually liked some of the stuff that he did.
Yeah.
In terms of like passing, defense, toughness, rebounding. He can move his feet.
In for Steven Adams and whatnot.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily know how much he'll play for Boston, but again, it's better than Lamar Stevens, who wasn't playing at all, and he's more of a wing.
Agreed.
So those were. And then obviously we had the Monte Morris deal, right, where he goes to Detroit. I believe it was for Shake Milton and Troy Brown Jr., right? And I think there was a second involved. Yeah, 1 second. So for the Wolves, you get your backup point guard, that you didn't have, right? Which is nice, right? They had that weird loss against Chicago in overtime, right? Which is kind of similar to some of the other losses that they've had at points where they just, for whatever reason, kind of just fizzle out offensively. And again, it'll help kind of stabilize their offense. He was a guy that was on those Nuggets teams in the playoffs. And he played with Jokic, so he's got some experience playing with some superstars. Even though, again, the Timberwolves don't have a guy equivalent to Jokic, but you do have some big time stars. So he can help out there, either if Mike Conley's hurt or if he just isn't playing well. So that's nice.
Yeah.
And then now I guess we can get into the trades for today, right? Because obviously a lot has gone down, since, earlier this morning, right? Because it was pretty quiet for pretty much most of yesterday, other than those few trades. And then we had, the whole night, right? And then early in the morning with basically nothing. And then in the last hour or so is where a lot has gone down. So we'll kind of just go through that. As well right now. So you got Buddy Hield, right, from the Indiana Pacers. He went to Philly for Marcus Morris. Key to the city holder, Marcus Morris, actually, senior. Furkan Korkmaz and 3 second round picks. So for Philly, right, you get your, 3-point, you get a really good 3-point shooter, right, one of the best in the business at it in the league. And you didn't really give up a lot of significant stuff, right? Morris has kind of played, mainly, I think, because other guys have been out. Korkmaz didn't play at all until recently, because again, guys have been in and out of the lineup. And in addition, right, I think he requested a trade last year, so he finally got his wish in regards to going somewhere else. Yeah, I don't necessarily know how much he'll play for Indiana, but it's more so from the Buddy Hield perspective for Philly. You get a guy that can help you right now,
Yeah.
in the rotation. I'm curious to see whether or not he starts or comes off the bench behind Melton, right? Because Melton was kind of the starting guard, two guard for Philly, right? Because it's to kind of balance out the offense you get with Maxey and then the defense you get with Melton. But either way, he should help. I mean, I guess, kind of your thoughts on the deal, and then we'll kind of get into the next few.
Yeah, I mean, I like it for both. With Indiana, you get some second round picks, and that definitely makes up for some things that you potentially lost with the Siakam trade. So I feel like you have to feel good about it for the Pacers, and then you also get rid of Buddy Hield, who's kind of been a polarizing name, I think, for this team in relation to the Pacers because, they've been trying to get rid of him for a few years now. So it is kind of good to see Buddy Hield move on to the Sixers, and I think that's the perfect place for him to be moving on to because, they're kind of bare bones at the moment with Embiid being out. So you need as much scoring and shooting as you possibly can with Embiid out. So I like the move for both sides, and I don't really have a problem with it. And then also, Indiana, they get some guys like Marcus Morris, like you're saying, and Korkmaz. So you can't really be too mad at it.
Yeah, and then next up, this one was a little bit stranger, right? This was the Raptors Jazz one. So the Raptors got Kelly Olynyk and a second-year player Ochai Agbaji from the Jazz for Kyra Lewis, Otto Porter Jr. in the 2024 first. I don't think it's not Toronto's own first. I think it's one of those weird protected first that's like the best of like X amount of teams or whatever. So it's not their own, so that's fine. Kind of random. Don't really understand it too much. But I guess for Toronto, right, you get two solid players, right? Olynyk's a good player.
Yeah.
Agbaji is a solid young player. And then you just never know because, like, there's a chance that Olynyk could be flipped. Or even if he just stays, you get a backup big. And then for the Jazz, you got a first, right, for Kelly Olynyk, which I think is what they had been looking for. It would have been nice to have not given up Agbaji, but, again, you did get a first. And we'll see what Utah does because, they're another team that has kind of the potential to make a couple other moves, but this was one that definitely caught me by surprise.
Yeah, and it's not so much like the people who were involved; it's kind of like where they were going more so. Because I think we both had Kelly Olynyk, being a candidate for some trades, but I just didn't really expect him to go to Toronto, and I believe he's from Canada, if I'm not mistaken. So that's kind of interesting. But I think it's a little bit of a confusing one, definitely a weird one, But shout out to the Jazz because they are able to get a first round pick out of all of this. So I think that's the biggest deal for them.
Yeah. Then next up, an even more bizarre trade, not a bad one, but one that I did not expect at all. I think actually, as a matter of fact, when we talked about him, I'm pretty sure I might have actually said no way he gets traded. And he actually managed to find a way to get traded. Gordon Hayward going to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So this is kind of what they end up using their, expiring or not expiring, like their contracts of guys that weren't really playing a whole lot for. And they got Gordon Hayward in return for giving up Trey Mann and Davis Bertans. They go to Charlotte. No picks, I don't think, involved in that one. So with Charlotte, I mean, you get... Oh, hello there. It's Xander Cade.
Oh, what's up, man? Was that the Clippers one? Was that the Clippers guy or the OKC one?
That's the Clippers guy.
Okay, got you.
Yeah, so he should be feeling pretty good about the Harden trade now since they've been playing... Yeah, since they've been playing basically the best basketball of anybody as of late.
What are they on? 27 wins?
I think they're like 25-6. I think since the deal. I think they just lost the other night, but other than that, like they've not lost. Pretty much since the early weird stretch. But back to the Hayward deal. I mean, I guess with Oklahoma City, you do get a veteran. He can do kind of a little bit of everything. I know the injuries have kind of, I guess, taken away from what we think he really is. I mean, he's a solid player. His issue is he just can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if he can stay healthy, he can help them out. I mean, again, it's better than what they had. I mean, I guess he can kind of fill the Josh Giddey role if he's not playing that great, then you can kind of put him in there and he can do some of the same things, just without other stuff. So, according to Xander Cade, kind of a snoozer deadline, in my opinion. It started off as a snoozer, but it's definitely picked up as of late.
Yeah, don't expect any big names. That's what.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we were kind of hinting at for a while, that we don't really expect any real big names to be moved. It's more so about the role players. I guess you can tell me about what you think about the OKC one before we get into the next couple of ones. As we get closer to what's been going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I like the OKC move for sure because I think, you're getting rid of Trey Mann, who's a guy who plays
Right.
minutes here and there, but, he's not the greatest guy, but he's a rotational player. And then obviously Bertans, I don't even think has logged any minutes this season. So, that's a guy that you get to unload the salary off of. And then you get an impact player at this point. I think that's what we can call him now, impact player in Gordon Hayward, because I think he'll make a difference, but, he's not a star anymore, obviously. But I think he's still got something left in the tank, and it should be interesting to see his role for
Yeah.
OKC. I doubt they'll flip him.
Right, yeah, I doubt it. He said I was wrong about Harden. Yeah, I mean that's when that trade first happened, we liked it for both teams because we
Yeah,
felt that, again, he kind of fit the role of the type of player that they really needed. They needed some type of point guard or some type of point guard type player to stabilize the offense. It was just a matter of how much would he be willing to buy in, how much would he be willing to kind of, take a step back because he's at a point in his career where he probably shouldn't have as high of a usage rate at this point. And he's done that, right? He's not
yeah,
taking right as many shots on a nightly basis, right? He's setting everybody up. I mean, when you watch them play, they pretty much do a great job of getting just about any shot they want. So I mean, again, like I think it's been, kind of a home run for, the Clippers. As long as they're healthy, they're gonna be they're gonna be a tough out.
yeah. Agreed.
Um,
They're crazy.
Yeah. And next up, in terms of the next deal, right, we got the Knicks, or no, excuse me, no, we'll not get to that one yet. We'll do the Mavs and Wizards, right? So the Mavs, they get Daniel Gafford, so they got another center to add to the rotation. And the Wizards get Rashawn Holmes and I believe draft compensation. So I think it's a pick. I think they're involving because they just put it out because the trade details don't always come out at the same time. I think they're involving Oklahoma City in the deal to reroute a pick to
Okay.
Washington so that way, they can do something there. But, pretty much from the main, but this really mainly affects the Mavs, obviously, right? Because again, you get another big to add to the rotation, which is kind of what they've been looking for. We know that they were looking more so, I guess, recently for help on the wings, or the forward spot, but it doesn't sound like there may be guys out there, right? Because Mark Stein's kind of been putting out that the Wizards may be, holding on to Kuzma. So if you're the Mavs, you kind of pivot to your next position of need, and that would be a center spot because it was basically Lively and not much else, right? I guess Maxi Kleba is a small ball, big, right? Dwight Powell, but Gafford, I think kind of brings a similar type of skill set in terms of like the type of bigs that make a lot of sense for this team, where he's active, he gets after it on the boards, he can block some shots. Right, not really a scorer, but again, he can catch lobs, right? He can kind of do some of the lively stuff, but he's a little bit stronger. So, for when you have stretches where you need somebody else other than Lively or just to shake things up, you can put him in there. So I think this is good for Dallas.
Yeah, it's amazing for Dallas. I think so far they've got one of the better steals of the trade
Mhm.
deadline for sure. Because I'm a Wizards fan, so it's like I've seen like Gafford every time he plays, and he's come a long way. He's added the mid range, which is something a lot of people don't know because a lot of people really don't watch the Wizards. But he's added somewhat of a mid range, so he's got the pull up jump shot now. And then he's also great in the pick and roll. That's what I'm really looking forward to because I think it'll be really phenomenal to see him be paired with Luca, Kyrie, some guys who really fit well in the pick and roll. And, he can pretty much feast in that system. So shout out to Dallas for grabbing Daniel Gafford. I guess the only downside to him is that he is a little bit undersized, but,
Yeah.
I'm sure, he'll make up for it in bigger ways.
Yeah, and then now we move on to kind of the biggest one, right? And that's the Knicks deal, and they got Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks, and they gave up Quentin Grimes, Evan Fournier, Malachi Flynn, and 2 second-round picks. I believe these are going to have to be broken up into smaller-ish deals because some of these guys, like Malachi Flynn, can't be rerouted because they were just traded in that OG Anunoby deal, but.
Right.
This is pretty huge for the Knicks, right? Because you get, an infusion of some offense onto your team, right? Where, again, the Knicks, at times they've kind of had to rely on, some guys who aren't really like offensive minded players necessarily to hit some shots. But now you got some veterans out there who can, play a relatively simple role, know their role, right? And they're going to do it to a T, right? Bogdanovich, right? He can still score, he can still get hot, he can still shoot. And the only real rotational guy you're giving up is Quentin Grimes, right? Who we had kind of heard at different points that he was in trade rumors. Um, I guess, his role had been a lot lessened since last year because he started for the Knicks last year. I guess if you're the Knicks, it would be nice to kind of have at least a few younger players around, right? Because Bogdanovich and Burks, they're kind of getting up there in terms of age, right? Especially Bogdanovich. But I mean, I like it for the Knicks a lot. I
Yeah, I
think
like
I
it
think
too.
this is like probably the best deal of the deadline so far.
For sure, because I think you're getting some impact players and definitely some upgrades, and some vets with Alec Burks and then Bogdanovich. So you can't really
Mhm.
be mad at it, and then they're both really good shooters in my opinion. So I
Yeah.
think it'll help, and they've been busy. That's pretty active
Mhm.
for only like what, like an hour in at this point.
Yeah. Xander Cade, I want Capella. So, as the Clippers fan, which big are you more not like more disappointed in, but like which one are you the lowest on, right? Is it Plumlee, or Zubac? Because I
Zubac.
would think, because from what I've seen from the Clippers, like Zubac has kind of been a new man since they've gotten Harden, right? Where he's had a really great fit next to him, just in terms of as a roller, right? Sometimes short roll stuff. So I would think it would be more so you're probably thinking of Plumlee, but I don't know if they have the contracts to be able to
There's
do
no way.
something like that. I mean, I guess you would have to move, realistically, probably, either Plumlee or Zubac, probably more so Plumlee, and then combine them with like PJ Tucker and Bones. It's a pipe dream. Yeah, that's what I think personally.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
because, mainly just because I don't necessarily think that's going to be able to work. Just because, again, you're going to have to move a decent amount of guys, and I don't think there's like too many guys on the team that you like feel like you have to get rid of. Maybe like the only one is probably like Tucker and Bones, just so that way you can get a real rotational player as opposed to kind of just having two guys just sit on the bench and not do much. And we know PJ Tucker, wants out, which again because he's not playing. So,
Yeah.
um, but but basically it's kind of going how we thought, because again, it's mainly just been role players. There's been a lot of chatter about a lot of these other guys probably won't end up getting moved. Of course, we still have a few hours, right? We got about 3 hours left, until the end of the deadline. At 3 p.m. Eastern time. Sometimes stuff comes in afterwards, as long as I think the stuff is completed before 3. Like, it's fine, right? Like, I think everything's like it's almost kind of like a line, right? Where like people are in line
Yeah.
waiting for stuff, and as long as you get in the line before time runs out, you'll
Yeah.
be
Before the
okay.
cutoff point, you're
Um,
good.
yeah, so that's why we're gonna go past 3. But either way, this is what we thought, where it's just kind of a deadline where a lot of role guys are being moved. The good news is that it doesn't seem like like teams are just like, okay, we're gonna give up multiple first round picks, for these role players, right? Like, a
Yeah.
lot of these, have either been, you know, a few seconds. The 2024 firsts, right, seem like those are the ones that teams are kind of treating as like, whatever. I think it's because a lot of people are a little low on this upcoming draft. So if you don't feel that great about it, right, you'd rather get an impact player now versus a guy that you may not be all that high on. So
Absolutely, I agree. I think that's definitely the philosophy. But overall, I think it's been a smooth deadline. Nothing like like we said, earth shattering. And I don't think that's going to be the case. We're just going to continue to see role players be moved, in exchange for other role players. Because I mean, with Gordon Hayward, I guess that's what the biggest salary that's been moved today. And
yeah,
he's not a star anymore. So that kind of sets the tone, I think.
yeah. I mean, yeah, and then it's funny because I have to eat it because I still remember when I was like, yeah, there's no way he gets traded.
Yeah,
And he got traded,
yeah,
so obviously that's always kind of the funny thing about the deadline is there's always a couple of things that happen that you don't really expect. I know that there had been stuff out there, I think, earlier that had said like, hey, Charlotte's looking for a first for Hayward. Well, they didn't get one, but they were still able to get off that deal. Which is huge for them, right? Because I mean, again, you get some young guys in addition to clearing a ton of cap space. Which puts them in a different position than they were in before.
yeah.
So,
Agreed.
for a team like for a team like a Charlotte, right? Like Brian Windhorst, he was kind of putting out there that Miles Bridges is probably not going to get traded. Um, and the thing for him is, right, because he's on the qualifying offer, he kind of has the ability to block, any trades that happen for him.
Right.
So maybe his goal is, hey, I'm playing really well for Charlotte right now. So if I continue to play well and stay, then I'll be able to get, my big contract from Charlotte and just stay there because they're going to have more cap than they did. We'll see. But yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't think
Miles
he's
Bridges,
gonna.
LOL. Yeah,
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 he's
I mean,
probably not
like,
gonna
but it was interesting because there were so many trade rumors, about him, and the biggest one was the one about him going to Phoenix. Because Phoenix had apparently been, in on him, which again, like, it's a talent upgrade. Obviously, you got some off the court stuff that you got to think about, but I guess this is kind of what these teams will do, where they'll kind of take advantage of a situation where a guy's stock is really low, just kind of buy low on it, but he may not get moved, especially if he doesn't want to be moved. But
for sure.
yeah, and then I thought it was pretty funny how like right before. Or maybe like in the midst of all the trades going down, there was the thing about them actually coming to a name, like an agreement on the name for the in-season tournament,
Oh yeah,
which just kind of just flew completely under the radar. I think
yeah,
it's like what is it, the Emirates in-season tournament, something
yeah.
like that, right? So
Hmm.
that's just
Hey,
just kind
hey,
of
it
yeah,
is what it is.
yeah. No comment on that one, but well, I don't know. It's pretty obvious, that it's like yeah, we're gonna follow soccer, but it's
So,
still it's pretty funny.
so since Xander's a Clippers
Hmm.
fan, I wanted to ask him this because there was a rumor I think about an hour ago. PJ
Hmm.
Tucker wants out of LA. Well, what do we
Right.
think of that? Do you think he's gonna get moved?
Well, my thought process would be if the Clippers can find an upgrade and they have to move him, then they're gonna do it because
Right.
it's literally a guy that's not playing,
Yeah.
that's making money, that could be used to get another rotational player, right? Again, if they add another piece, right, then that can make them even better than they already are right now. So, I mean, if we'll see, because again, we don't know anything about like it's not like there's rumors about like oh there's a team that's interested in him, right?
Right.
It sounds like he wants to be traded and then maybe play for another team that has a chance to do something. So maybe he's a buyout guy. I don't necessarily know how much he has left in the tank at this point, considering he's up there in age, and I have literally not seen him play for quite a while, right? I kind of remember him playing um early on after the Harden trade, right? Because he had just gotten there, but after a while, right, then he stopped playing. And right after he stopped playing, yeah, he barely plays. I don't even care. Yeah,
Figures.
he's not gonna miss him if they
Yeah.
trade for somebody, better, right? Like, and
Exactly.
I mean, there's probably a lot of better options out there. It's just a matter of can you pile, or cobble together, something in addition to that? Because you're probably gonna have to add some type of draft pick, right? I don't know how many more they have left, but you're probably going to have to do that. And then they're going to have to weigh, like, is it worth it? Which,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, at this point, because you could win the title this year if you're the Clippers. So if they do it, hopefully, hopefully they don't do something where it's like, oh, we're not going to trade him because we don't want to give up this pick. Like, you go all in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, he barely plays. Does he even play? Like, I don't think I've seen him play at all. Like,
When I
maybe.
went to the Clippers game, I didn't see him play.
Yeah, and I mean, like, yeah, so he's not even playing in garbage time, which makes
Exactly.
sense. I
Yeah. Yeah. He
Yeah,
wasn't
because
even
there's no
playing against the
point.
Wizards, so
Yeah, so
what the
yeah, so
heck?
I mean, yeah,
Just I'm looking around on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. There's like rumors, and it's just funny to see what people are turning down. Like apparently, Pistons and Grizzlies have been engaged in trade discussions on Killian Hayes, but Detroit wants
yeah,
more second round draft compensation than what Memphis is
right,
currently offering. It's like, I mean, you can't really sell Killian Hayes that high. So if you're gonna sell
no,
him, you gotta get rid of him ASAP
right, especially
if you
like
want
in
to
a
get rid
year
of
where
him.
Memphis is not good. Why would
Right.
they give up a ton just to get Killian Hayes? I
Yeah,
mean,
like you
like,
got to be smart, bro. I think
yeah,
Detroit is overvaluing him, but I'm hoping for him to get moved.
yeah, and then Chris Haynes, he was talking about DeRozan and Caruso, and he was like, it would take an incredible, literally quote unquote incredible haul for Bulls to trade either guard. I don't know what that haul would be. I don't know if it really makes any real sense, but that's what the Bulls seem to want to do. I
Yeah,
mean, again, I guess you could say, this is, because people have started to talk about it now where they think an unintended consequence of the play-in is that now you have more teams that are kind of like, let's just go for it, where it's like in a normal year, right? The Bulls would just be like, all right, we're done. Like, there's not really much else we can really do.
right.
So let's just kind of move on from some of these guys. Shoot, honestly, even with the plan, if I'm the Bulls, like why would I keep half of these guys, right?
Yeah,
Like, because I
you're
mean,
gonna get
like,
eliminated.
yeah, like it, yeah, and like if you're, like if you're the Bulls, like I understand Caruso's a really good defensive guard, and maybe yeah, he could be a part of whatever core you have, but like he's close to 30 at this point, right? So it would probably be more likely that he would be better suited for a team that's contending for something and be a rotational piece there as opposed to being on the Bulls, right? And then
Yeah.
with DeRozan, he's in the last year of his deal. What if he just walks and goes somewhere else? I mean, I don't think there's a lot of teams that will have cap, and how many of those teams that have cap will be interested in signing him, but still, right? Like, I mean, I just, if he's gonna leave for nothing, I don't understand it. But
Yeah.
maybe he stays and resigns. I don't know.
Yeah. Can you hold it down for like 2 minutes? I'm gonna get some more water.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Yeah, so I mean, we're looking around. I mean, again, it's kind of like what he said. Right now, it's pretty quiet. I mean, we just had a stretch, of multiple trades. Usually, I think what tends to happen is we kind of have stuff in waves where you have maybe like I don't know 5 or whatever trades in one stretch, and then it gets kind of quiet again. Then you have another stretch of trades. I mean, this is kind of just par for the course. I mean, because again, we're kind of at a point where there's less than 3 hours left, so it's kind of there's still a decent amount of time left. But you would like to, if you're a team that's looking to do something, you'd like to kind of get it wrapped up relatively soon. So, I expect within probably the next, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes, we'll probably get something. But either way, yeah. I mean, but I understand your thought process on it doesn't seem like a lot's going on right now. Just or at the very least that it's kind of a snoozer deadline. It definitely was for like, most of the week, right? Because again, we didn't have any real serious trades until yesterday, right? That was kind of the first stretch. But then you also have to factor in we had the trades in the off season, and in the beginning of the season, which we don't always get. So that kind of makes less guys available anyways. I think that's kind of the main thing is that like which guys are available where you're like, let's give up a ton for these guys.
Yeah. So what's been your favorite move so far? Because I think mine has been the Dallas one. Because I think
Mhm.
now that you have Gafford and Lively as well, I think that kind of gives you a nice little rotation. Underrated at this
Mhm.
point. So what's been your favorite
Yeah.
one?
I like the next one just
Okay.
because again, just the fact that you get an infusion of offense to a team that's already really good on the defensive end. And these guys aren't necessarily guys that are quote unquote creators. So it's not like oh, Brunson's kind of gas, so you can kind of give the ball to Bogdanovich and Burks and let them cook. No, that's not the case. But it still takes some pressure off of him because these are other guys that you legitimately have to guard. Now they can spread the floor and put a lot more shooters out there. So that's kind of my favorite one personally.
Okay.
But I do like the Dallas one just because again, it does help, give you another center. I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious whether or not Lively continues to start or if they start Gafford. Lively's been out recently because he's been kind of banged up for a few stretches. So, it's nice, but it's nice to have that other physical option because the thing with Lively is he's, solid defensively and he's very athletic, but he's thin. He's kind of, not undersized, but he's kind of small for a
Yeah.
guy, his height, where, he can kind of get bullied by certain guys, right? Like if you watch him play, against like an AD, or, a Jokic or, just anybody that's got a decent amount of strength to them, sometimes it can be a little problematic. So now that you have another, more of a bruising big body guy, even though he's not that tall, like you said, he is undersized. But he can get physical and he's also a decent athlete. We saw him in Washington.
Yeah.
So multiple times. So
Mm-hmm.
no, but it is kind of funny, right? And that was a guy that we thought could get traded. So
Yeah.
and I think we said it was probably more likely from the Wizards' perspective that it's one of the role player guys as opposed to like a Kuzma, or somebody like that.
For sure.
Just because the pathway is easier.
I'm very curious about Tyus Jones because now that Minnesota has filled that kind of void with Monte Morris. I'm very curious to see where Tyus Jones lands, if anywhere. I'm hoping Phoenix will take a swing at him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the rumors that we've heard about with Phoenix is more so that they're kind of intrigued by wings.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess is that they must feel like, all right, we're kind of comfortable with, just having those guys kind of doing most of the ball handling and playmaking. So, so I guess their move is to try to go get a wing. I like the Knicks move the most. That's what Xander Cade said. Yeah, that's like I said,
Yeah.
that's how I feel, just because I think just those guys really do fill a need that the Knicks, could use. Because again, they're very good defensively. Obviously they got guys out right now, right? Because Anunoby's been hurt. Brunson got hurt in their last game against the Grizzlies, so hopefully he's not out for long, if any time at all. And then I guess, what was the other guy? It was Alec Burks, right? Just another veteran who played for the Knicks before, and he played under Tibbs. So,
Yep.
Another guy that's familiar with the system in New York. I mean, again, I don't feel like you have to trade for Alec Burks. Like, I think you could have been okay with just Quentin Grimes. But if you feel like let's just get some more veterans, okay.
Yeah.
And especially again, if he, because it sounded like he was frustrated with his role because he only just started playing more once they got Anunoby, and that was only because they had fewer guys. Like, but now that they have more guys to add, like he just may not have played as much anymore. So
Right.
because you got DiVincenzo who's been playing great, who's been starting now since Barrett and Quickly were moved. Right, you got Josh Hart, who's not really a guard anymore. He's more of a forward. And then in addition to that, right? I mean, you got all those other guys on the roster too, McBride, and others like that. So,
Yeah.
but that's how I feel. But like I said, I think that's my favorite one so far. So hopefully there's more.
Yeah. I guess like the
Um,
ramifications for
mhm.
the 76ers move or whatever. I think
Yeah.
with the Daniel House thing.
Oh yeah, we forgot to talk about that one. Whoops.
Yeah, but Daniel House is being moved. So I guess that pushes them. I think in that salary cap cushion
Yeah.
thing to sign
So what?
buyout players post deadline or something like that.
So basically it moves Philly under the luxury tax, right? So their roster, so that's good for them because that makes it so that way, their roster is not as costly, right? Because
Hmm.
if you have a chance to get out of the luxury tax and you don't have to give up anybody of significance, which he wasn't, right? Because he wasn't playing a whole lot for them, you do it. And it also, like you said, opens up the roster spot so they can get a buyout guy. It sounds like that they want Kyle Lowry, right? So if you can get him on the buyout market, obviously he's an older guy, so that's not necessarily like the most amazing thing in the world because it's not the same Kyle Lowry as he once was, but it's better than whatever other options that they probably could have had because there's not really anyone else they can really move to get a backup point guard that isn't a part of their regular rotation, right?
Right.
So I mean, like Batum's actually been playing well for them, even though he's been hurt. But it doesn't seem like they're going to move him. So for Philly, again, it's kind of in a way been pretty good for them too, because again, you got under the luxury tax, you improved your team, and you've put yourself in a position to get some guys in the buyout market. Now you just kind of, whatever other moves they do after that, then you just kind of wait for Embiid to come back and hopefully get healthy, right? Because I think, and this is kind of the tough part, right? When injuries are reported, where it's like, they said he'll be reevaluated in what is it like 4 weeks. But Sham said he's probably going to be out like 6 to 8, right? Because again,
Yeah.
the reevaluation date isn't the return date. It is very rare that that's the case.
Hmm.
And especially with a meniscus tear where you have to have surgery on it, that's probably not something you're going to come back in a few weeks from. But
Mm-mm.
either way, I'm at least glad to see from Philly's perspective that they were still active and trying to do some stuff
Yeah.
because it would have felt, it would have sucked if, they ended up just not doing anything and just been like, it's a lost season. So,
Yeah. They've definitely made some moves, and I'm happy for them.
yeah. So, but either way, yeah, but it always is kind of funny how, like, once you get close to the deadline, like, either guys are just kind of sitting out, right? And again, some of these guys could legitimately be hurt, and then others it's because they're about to get moved, right? Like Bogdanovich. He sat out in that Detroit win last night against the Kings. And then lo and behold, he ended up getting moved the next day, right? Like,
Right.
is that a coincidence?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. W
we
script.
got it. All right, we got another trade. Thunder. Okay, so that's just in addition to the Hayward thing.
Yeah.
So
I've
it's
seen.
just So they're adding Vasilije Micic or whatever, the backup guard for the Thunder, right? Like I think he's like what, third string.
Yeah.
Doesn't really play a whole lot. I've seen him play sometimes, but not always.
I mean, it's
So
intriguing. I guess the Hornets, they get more value out of it, so you can't really be too mad about it.
yeah, so he's and it's but it I think he's on what like a two. It's either a 2 or 3 year deal, I think.
Yeah.
So. But again, if you're, again, from Oklahoma City perspective, you're giving up 3 guys that weren't playing, for a guy that if he's healthy, he can be part of your rotation. Like I would have, I was thinking that they were going to trade, for a backup big, which is still possible, right? It may just not be like a, you know, bigger salary guy. It may be like a minimum contract or something
Yeah.
type guy. Because, again, you could find a backup big for pretty much just about any salary.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I think they should do. I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. They don't really need to trade for like a $15 million per year big man. I mean, like I guess you could, but you know,
I'm curious what the Lakers are going to do. I'm curious what the Hawks are going to do. A lot of the teams that were kind of mentioned like prior to the deadline haven't really done too much.
Yeah, actually, speaking of the Hawks, right? There was a thing going on yesterday, from Chris Haynes where he was saying that the New Orleans Pelicans were really interested in DeJounte Murray, right? Which kind of came out of nowhere because we knew the Lakers, I think the Jazz were also mentioned.
Yeah.
But he kind of threw some water on his own stuff where he said earlier today, like, yeah, the talks for the Murray Pelicans thing had stalled, so they're probably not going to do it. And it would have been like they were trying to get Murray and Okongwu from the Hawks, which is kind of interesting. I'm curious who the Pelicans would have given up. That would probably have to be like C.J. McCollum, and someone else, to add into the deal. But like that would have been interesting, like because it's very different from what they have now, right? Because like Murray's a completely different guard, from McCollum, right? Because he's more of like an athletic attacking guard.
Yeah.
Compared to McCollum, who's more of like a skill, 3-point shooting, pull up jumper type guy, even though he can attack somewhat. And then Okongwu, right, is obviously a different big man from like, Valanciunas or, I guess kind of like Larry Nance, but a little bit different because he's more of like a true center, I think, but undersized.
For sure.
But that would have been interesting, I think. Right. And then you had like the wacky stuff. What was it yesterday? I think with D'Angelo Russell, right, where it was like, I think it was Darvin Ham who said that he had like a tune-up procedure, which I don't know what that means. And then somebody had to come in and clarify that it was a treatment.
Yeah.
Right. So and which
undisclosed injury.
Yeah, but it does say he's still available to play, so it's not like he's listed as questionable. Just kind of a weird thing, and that's kind of why, like with teams when they talk about injuries, it's kind of hard to trust them because you never know. And like to an extent, right? Like they're gonna be sometimes kind of close-lipped about certain injuries because these are personal things for the most part. But then there's other times like that where it's like sometimes in trying to hide stuff, you make the situation even worse, right? Because like if they had just said it was like a minor treatment and he'll probably miss like little to no time, then it's like, then that's fine, right? Then nobody would have really questioned it at all. I mean, like some people would, like in terms of conspiracy trade stuff, but like most people wouldn't have said anything. You know what I mean? So it's like, but like that was just dumb. Do you think D'Lo gets traded? Honestly, at this point, it almost feels like not really.
Yeah.
Because it's just because again, to me personally, if it's not an upgrade at the point guard position, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because it's like like some people have said, like trade him for Dorian Finney-Smith, which like that's a wing. And I understand that the Vanderbilt injury kind of, maybe from their perspective changes what they should look for. But I just like if you're gonna move D'Lo, I think it makes more sense to bring back another point guard. It doesn't make sense to just trade him for a guy that plays a completely different position.
Yeah.
Because then you basically put LeBron in a spot where he's probably for the rest of the regular season gonna have to control the offense pretty heavily, and he's probably gonna run out of gas. Or potentially have to miss time due to an injury.
Because
I know they said that
Vincent going to be out.
We don't know. I think I think I don't know. It's supposed to be maybe Marchish. I don't know, but either way, that's the rough part, right? Because that's a guy you signed for the mid-level and you didn't get anything out of him. But I don't know. I'm almost kind of feeling like no. I mean, I could be wrong, obviously, because again, as soon as somebody says one thing, right, things can instantly change. The thing I don't believe is that I don't believe that they're keeping him because they said, oh, they're impressed with his play as of late. Like, I don't think that's the case. I think it's more so that they're not very thrilled with the offers, that are out there if it's not DeJounte Murray. And personally, I think it would be worse to do a bad trade than to do nothing. You know what I mean? It's like you could put yourself in a position where you do an awful trade like a panic move, and those are the worst types of deals because we've seen those before from teams in the past where like a team just does something unbelievably stupid,
Mm-hmm.
and then makes the situation even worse than it already is.
Yep. And
So
then you set your
I would
franchise
say,
back for years.
yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think of the last one in recent memory that was kind of bad. Um, I mean, in hindsight, it feels like the Ben Simmons one, like from the Brooklyn perspective, is bad because like he's barely played. You've not gotten much out of him, and you gave up James Harden, who's now helping, one of the best teams in the NBA. So it feels like that trade, is kind of the bad one. I mean, I don't know if you would consider that a panic trade, but it was the type of trade where it's like you honestly made your situation worse. But at the
Yeah.
same time, if he wanted out and he was potentially not going to stay because of the Kyrie drama, then it's like, what can you really do? He put him in a rough spot. But that's the type of deal where it's like doing something like that hurts.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, it's been very quiet since the Micic thing.
Yeah, and I was saying like, while you were gone, that I feel like a lot of this stuff tends to happen in waves where like we get a handful of trades over like, the stretch of like 5-10 minutes. Then we have like a stretch where nothing happens. Then we get another wave of stuff, that comes in, and then we get another break and then another wave that comes in. But yeah, and then also I guess I forgot today, what they're unveiling the Kobe
Oh
statue
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
LA, right? We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know what the pose will be, but that's obviously a cool thing, that we're getting a statue, of one of the all-time greats. It's kind of sucks that, it's in these circumstances,
Yeah.
but, still, you do get a statue, so that's cool.
Hopefully it's a fadeaway. It's got to be a fade, right?
Yeah, it could be that. It could be, the thing with him and his daughter, maybe.
True.
Where he's like up on the podium or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know, but I'm curious to see what it looks like. And then obviously, this is not happening now, right? But Wade is getting a statue in Miami, right? I think later this
Yep.
year, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So
Wow, time's really flying, man. Like all these legends that we grew up with, they're
yeah,
retired. It's crazy.
yeah. I mean, it is kind of funny. Now we're in a new era in the NBA where we have some up and coming stars, that are gonna come in and replace a lot of the guys, like you said, that we grew up with. It's kind of crazy how we're at this point.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like you said, you go back, right? 10 years ago, right? You had guys like, Kobe, LeBron. Obviously, you had the other guys, like Dirk or Paul Pierce, or Wade, and others, right? And, now it's like a completely new crop of guys, right?
Yeah.
And then even like Steph, right? He's an older guy now, too. And, now incoming other guys, right? Like, Luca, Anthony Edwards, right?
Shea.
Ja Morant, if he can stay healthy. Yeah, Shea, obviously. Paolo obviously is an up and coming guy because he's been, amazing this year. So
Yeah, for sure.
just kind of wild, and it just also just kind of goes to show how talented the league is. Because again, 10, 15 years ago, there were guys that were playing big minutes for teams that probably wouldn't really play at all now.
For
Like
sure. Agreed.
like I remember when we used to play, what was it, my team, in 2K, and there were guys that were like, 60 whatever overalls, that were on rosters that were like, seventh, eighth men on,
Yeah.
decent teams.
Which is kind of wild to think about. The talent gap
Yeah.
is crazy now.
Right. Like, and not to like pick on guys, right? But I remember say like for, Houston, right, when Harden was there, early on, remember you had guys like Omer Ashik or like Donatas Montiunas.
Yeah.
For
Parsons.
the Pelicans, I remember you said what?
Parsons.
Yeah, Chandler Parsons, or remember like for the Pelicans, there were guys like Darius Miller. Yeah, very, very talented. League is in good hands.
Oh,
Yeah,
easily.
it is.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
future's bright, bro. I mean, look at the
Yeah,
history. Luka making history, Embiid making history.
yeah,
That's another
exactly.
guy, Embiid. And
Yeah,
obviously Shea. Like, I think the whole entire NBA world is like in love with Shea right now, deservedly,
Yeah.
because he's crazy.
yeah. I mean, yeah, and that's kind of the interesting thing, right? And again, like a guy like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, where it's like now this is a guy who could potentially win the MVP, right? Obviously, it's a rough situation mainly because of the Embiid injury, right? But this is a guy where it's like if you went back like a year or two ago, I don't know if as many people would have heard as much about him, but now you know, now he's like rapidly becoming like, you know, an NBA favorite amongst most
Yeah.
fans.
Last year was definitely like his, I guess you want to call it breakout season to like the entire
Yeah.
NBA world. I feel like the people who like watch the NBA religiously, we already knew like he was talented,
Yeah.
but I don't think anybody
Right.
saw this coming. Like this is wild.
Yeah.
Like you said, I
Exactly.
think Embiid is probably the real MVP, but you know they're going to give it to Shea. I think if he continues to play, which obviously he will.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because he doesn't really miss time. So.
No, and based on OKC's record, they're looking very strong.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the funny part, right? Is because again, like, you know, you look at in the Western Conference, right? The top four seeds are all, you know, basically a game or so within each other. I think, you know, before last night, they were all tied.
Yeah,
Basically, I think three of them are tied right now, but you got OKC, Minnesota, the Nuggets, and the Clippers all basically right there.
yeah,
Where, like, you know, if one of those teams loses like 3, 4 games in a row and another one wins 3, 4 games in a row, then they got, you know, they're gonna you know, jump forward to one, right?
and the
Like say the
Clippers aren't too
Clippers were
far
one.
behind.
Yeah, like the Clippers were the one seed, I think, yesterday, and
Yeah,
then just because they lost one game, they dropped to four. But then
yeah,
you factor in for them, right? They were, you know, like a play-in team, right? Like a couple months ago, and they went from that to basically, you know, they got a chance to get the one seed.
yeah. It's crazy how they figured out that whole like system, like where Harden, um, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, how they can all like coexist together. Like it's
Yeah,
kind of wild. Like it's
right.
really
Because that
something
was
special.
yeah, because that's what we were talking about when it first happened, when it seemed kind of clunky, you know, and they were losing games. But then they figured it out, right? They moved Westbrook to the bench. They, you know, took PJ Tucker out of the rotation, and now they figured it out. So
Yeah, props to them.
yeah, and you know, that kind of goes to show where it's like, you know, because we liked the trade at first, you know, for both teams, but it felt initially early on like we were about to get eggs on our faces because everybody was, you know, because they were losing games, and
Yeah,
now, you know, that trade looks a lot better.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's why sometimes like when we do like winners and losers, like it's sometimes it's kind of hard to just say like flat out like you know who the winner and loser sometimes of a trade is, because sometimes you just gotta wait, and then there's other times, because there are some times where it is very obvious, right, who the winner is very quickly, and then there's other times where it's like, you know, hey, give it a few years or give it even one season, right, and like you might notice a complete difference.
facts,
um
bro.
yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like when you look at the Clippers, I mean, like again, they're gonna be one of the favorites. You know, Xander. Like I think, you know, again in the West, it's, you know, right now it's probably either them or the Clippers, or excuse me, them or the Nuggets. You know, I think that's gonna be an interesting matchup for Denver because again, you know, you're probably gonna have to put Aaron Gordon on Kawhi if I had to guess, but then it's like who's gonna guard Paul George, right? You know, because you'd imagine KCP probably guards Harden, but then like, you know, if Paul George goes off, you know, then that's gonna be a tough matchup. You have a couple of bigs, right, where it's like it's not that they're gonna guard Jokic, but they can at least get rebounds and be physical. Um, and you know, especially if they can get home court, that will help as well. You know,
Yeah,
because again, like the one seed is up for grabs. And if they can get the one seed, which they have a really good shot of doing, you know, they got a real chance. So,
yeah. I
and
mean,
even without it, they
they're a
could do it.
favorite.
The
They're a
main thing
favorite.
for them is health. The main
Hmm.
thing for them is health, because this is, you know, finally after, you know, a number of years where they weren't healthy, this is the first year in quite a while where both Kawhi and Paul George are healthy, and they have talent around them too that makes sense, even more sense than the ones before. Because I don't think the teams that they had before were bad rosters. It just obviously also hurt that those guys were not healthy, but now
Yeah.
they are, and you have more talent. If they go down, we're doomed. Yeah, but again, but that's the gamble you make, and I think you have to give props to the Clippers front office, you know, for also saying like, hey, you know, these guys are get hurt a lot, but we still believe in them, and we're going to try to do whatever we can to put, you know, something around them just to give us a chance, because that's what you have to do, right? Because
Yeah.
again, they don't really have any picks in the future, so if it doesn't work out, then you're in for, you know, a rough, you know, stretch
A rough
afterwards.
rebuild,
But
bro.
yeah, but this is their best chance, you know. So
Yeah.
if you
They're
know, and
taking
if they
advantage
can
of the
get it,
window.
yeah, and if they get it done this year, let's say they win one title and they don't win again, it was all worth it.
Yeah, and then they get the new arena too, and then you've got these
Yeah,
guys
exactly.
locked up on extensions too. So hey,
Right.
bro, it's gonna be special. I think if they do
Yeah,
it or if they pull it off.
right, and that's the other part, right? Because you know, going into the season, right, and you know, in the off season, we were talking about, there's a lot of pressure on the Clippers because, they got to figure out, can we still win with this group?
Yeah.
Can we get those guys to sign on the dotted line and get extensions, or are we going to have to trade them if it doesn't work out? Um, but,
Injuries are your
at the
kryptonite. Yeah, for sure, bro.
yeah, but you could say that about, a lot of teams, and players, right? Because I mean, like, we got, a lot of groups, on teams where like if one of your stars or, if you have two stars, if two of them go down, you're kind of toast. And some guys are more injury prone than others. But when you think about it, a decent chunk of the stars this year have been healthier than I think you would have expected. Obviously, unfortunately, you had the Embiid injury. Um, but outside of that, right, again, Kawhi and AD or excuse me, Kawhi and Paul George have been healthy. LeBron and AD have been healthy. Steph has been healthy. And those are guys that have missed a decent amount of time the last few years. Um, with Kawhi, he had that one season where he didn't play at all with the ACL recovery thing. So
Yeah, it's gonna be special. I think the playoffs are gonna really like show who's real and who's not, and then that's the case every year. But I think
yes,
this year
yeah,
it'll definitely expose some frauds. But who knows? We'll see.
yeah. I guess another team that I'm kind of curious, what they end up doing is Golden State, right? Because that's another team, that for a decent chunk of the year has just been kind of up and down. They've struggled. They're on a bit of a win streak now, right? Because they, changed the rotation, right? Where they're starting Draymond at center, right? They're starting Wiggins and Kaminga together, and that pairing has been a lot more effective now. Um, but at the same time, they are what the 11 seed, so it's
Yeah,
like, you're still gonna, so you're still gonna have to do a decent amount of winning, to catch up, to some of these other teams. And I think it's gonna be a little bit tougher, to believe if the roster is basically about, the same as it was. Maybe you kind of hope and pray that like maybe Clay will be better, maybe Wiggins will be better. And if we just get like 2, 3 good months of them, and they're in a rhythm, maybe we can do something. But what do you think in terms of like what they're going to do? Because their hands are kind of in a weird spot as well, just because of the, because they're, the salaries are, and the cap in the situation that they're in is kind of tough, right? Because, it's a really expensive roster, not a whole lot of flexibility. And the guys, if you want to bring back some impact guys, it's going to have to be one of the main guys because I don't think Kaminga is getting traded at this point because he's played very well. So, I mean, what do you think? Before we address the
yeah.
comment.
Fred just. Oh, you want me to talk about that before we address Fred's comment?
Well, no, I guess we'll just address it. I mean,
Yeah.
like in terms of the downfall, I mean, last year, I feel like was kind of a wake up call, right? Where it's like, we kept waiting and waiting for them to kind of figure it out, and it seemed like they figured it out right at the end, of the season, right, where they kind of went on a run to get back to that 6th seed because they were in a spot kind of like LA, right, where they had a long stretch where they were, play in, borderline out of the play
Yeah.
in. Then they made a quick run of it. And I remember they were like my pick to come out of the West. And it was mainly because I didn't really believe in a lot of the other teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like Denver, I wasn't sure about because I wasn't sure about their ability to defend. The issue with, the Suns was I didn't trust the depth and their ability to stay healthy, and they ended up getting hurt. Um, and then none of the other teams I really felt confidence in. Right? Like I didn't feel confident about Minnesota as the 8th seed.
Right.
I didn't think the Lakers would be able to get far enough. And then who else? The Sacramento Kings, I didn't believe in at all. But then we saw them against the Lakers, right? And that was kind of a wake up call where it was like, yeah, the lack of size was pretty glaring. And some of their guys just didn't play well that you needed to play well, right? Like Clay. When you look at him, right? He's been kind of a shell of himself, for the most
I
part,
think he's
right?
been cooked.
During the
Bro.
regular
He's
season,
cooked, bro.
during the regular season last year, he started off awful, then picked it up the second half of the year. Then in the playoffs, kind of just reverted back into a pumpkin. And then this year, right, has kind of just been up and down, right? He has some games every now and then where he plays really well, but then he has other games where he's awful, right? Like I think in that 60-point Steph game, he was like 4 for 20 or something crazy like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was another game against the Nets where they won, but he was benched at the end of the game. He
Yep.
wasn't doing anything.
It's $43
So,
million right there, man.
right, and he's in a contract year too, right? So that's the tough part because it's like, he's hopefully playing, to get a new contract and, is he going to get it? Like I don't know.
Probably not. Not with
I
those
mean, like he's
numbers
going to
right
get
now.
like I think he will stay and re-sign, but will he stay and re-sign at the amount that he wants? No way.
No, he's only averaging 17 points on like what 40 from the field, so it's like pretty inefficient at this point. But Yeah, I think the Warriors are done. And as for their deadline moves, I don't think they're going to make any at this point. I've heard that they've kind of walked back all the stuff that they were talking about Chris Paul and
Mm-hmm.
Wiggins. So, and the rumor is that they're apparently banking on Wiggins to improve his play for the remainder of the season. I don't know if you can really afford to do that, but at this point, I don't think they're going to move either of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I guess again, the thing is with Chris Paul is he actually, was playing, relatively well for them in the second unit. Um, but to me, it also kind of suggests again, it's like what I said with D'Lo, where it's probably like they don't like the offers, right?
Yeah,
Because again, like it doesn't make a lot. Like say with Wiggins, if you're going to trade him, you'd like to get a guy that's either an upgrade or at least about the same, but not as on as tough of a contract.
yeah,
But if there's nothing there, then like what can you really do? And I think that's for some of the teams that don't make moves, that is probably what's going to be the case. Is that like we don't like the offers available either because teams are that have stuff are asking for too much, or there's just not really any guys that they like. The Bucks one was kind of weird too, right? Because they were a team where it's like you hear stuff about like, oh, they're interested in Wiggins, or it's like, oh, they're interested in Grant Williams, and I'm like, I don't understand it,
right.
so like maybe you can talk some sense into me about those, but like that
I
doesn't
don't
make a
get,
lot of sense to me
I don't get it
from
either.
Milwaukee.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
and
get it.
it's like yeah, like I understand them like looking at moves to, to improve. It's just like do those moves make any sense? They just
Yeah,
don't to me. Because like
I don't
again,
think
if
so.
I'm a contender, I don't know if I'm touching Wiggins' contract because I don't know what I'm getting out of him, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, maybe like I think with Dallas, right, there were rumors about them maybe being interested in him. I'd imagine that's probably off the table now, but unless they move like a Hardaway or something. But it's like again, from both teams' perspectives, it's like if you're Dallas and you get Wiggins, you'd have to be for sure that you're getting, a better version of Wiggins back than the one that we've seen for most of this year. But if you're getting that version, then why wouldn't the Warriors just keep him? And then from the
exactly.
Warriors' perspective, yeah, like who are you getting that's significantly better than Wiggins, on that contract?
Yeah, it's
Maybe there
too
are guys
risky of a
there.
move. I don't like
Yeah,
it.
but again, if that's what he is, why would the other team do it? Because it's not like he's an expiring; he's on a long-term deal.
Yeah.
Which again, that would make sense. But if it's like since he's on a multi-year deal, like nah. Let's see. We got something. Oh no, it's just the Drummond was fine.
Oh my god, dude, Josh Hart is so funny. He said, "Boys better hop
Oh
on that PJ and suit up." That is actually hilarious. I mean, hey,
yeah,
I think everybody in the world likes the Knicks moves. Like those are really good.
hmm
Like that'll probably be like
yeah,
game changing this season for sure.
yeah. Because that's the other thing with the Knicks is that with the Philly situation. Obviously we got to see when Embiid comes back and how long the ramp up process takes. But now the Knicks are in a spot where like they're better than last year. And they have a chance where like if they can get some luck maybe in terms of like if Mitchell Robinson comes back, maybe if you get a relatively favorable matchup or just Brunson just goes off like he did in last year's playoffs, right? You got a chance to maybe get to the conference finals. And make some noise this year if you're the Knicks. Which again, that's if you're the Knicks, that's why you go all in. Because again, RJ Barrett and Quickly are good players, but Anunoby is the guy that I think that you would really want if you're trying to, compete and win, some real games.
Yeah, because you don't have time
Um,
to wait on improvement from RJ. You don't have like a lot of time for IQ either. So it was a great
yeah,
move.
and for Quickly, you have to pay him, and it's like if I'm the Knicks, I'd rather just pay Anunoby than pay both Barrett and Quickly. Even though again, I
Facts.
like those guys, but I'd rather have Anunoby plus the stuff they have now.
Facts.
Xander Cade deadline is dry. Yeah, that's the tough part is that there are stretches of the trade deadline. Even in years where there's a lot where there's a lot that happens, there's like stretches where like, nothing goes on. Because again, we're kind of at a point where you would think either some teams are still kind of negotiating to do some stuff, or I don't know, maybe guys are on lunch breaks or something. Maybe some guys are grabbing like donuts or something or a ham sandwich. While they're kind of just chilling, making some trades. I don't know because I haven't seen the inner workings of the front office at the trade deadline. It's usually, I would imagine, crazy, but
Yeah, I bet.
um, yeah. But again, as we've already stressed, I don't really expect any like big time stars to be moved because who's available, right? I mean, like Zach LaVine, and Dejounte Murray were probably the two biggest names, but Zach LaVine is hurt. So, not that would stop, like a team like Detroit from trading for him, but it makes it less likely. And then DeJounte Murray, it sounds like a lot of people are saying that he probably won't get moved.
And
So,
we already saw Siakam get moved, but I don't know. I'm really like hyped for the Knicks. I don't know why. Like, I
yeah.
feel like the vibes are just really good there because they got OG, they got Bogdanovich, they got Alec Burks, all that without
Mhm.
relinquishing a first round pick, which is kind of wild. So they
Yeah.
have all their picks, for this year. So that means they could
Right.
potentially get somebody in the off season, like a
Right.
superstar or
Yeah.
something like that. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Because you basically gave up Barrett quickly, Grimes, and then, I guess Malachi Flynn, who they got from Toronto,
Yeah.
for Boyan, Alec Burks, and OG, right? And again, they've still been able to win games even, while guys have been in and out of the lineup, right? Because like Randall's out, right, which is a big factor because he's, probably their second best player, or not probably is their second best player, right? You got OG Anunoby, who's also been out with the elbow injury, and they've still found ways to win, a decent amount of their game. Obviously, they're not going to win every game because they're down two starters. Um, but they've still found ways, to win enough games that they've elevated, now in the standings, right? Because I think when they first traded for OG, I think they were a play-in team, or
Yeah.
something like that, right? They were like in that 7 to 9 range,
Yep.
and then now, as of today, right? I believe they're fourth.
Yep.
So with, again, you have a chance to potentially climb up because they're tied with the Bucks. And I think they're like a full game back of the Cavs, who've also been, going nuts as of late.
Yeah. And Brunson's an all-star.
Yeah, and Brunson's an all-star.
The vibes
Actually,
are
they have two
good.
all-stars, him and Randall,
Yeah.
although Randall's not going to play. But still, you got two all-stars. You're probably going to be a top 4 seed because, I mean, I think it's going to be kind of tough unless Philly can win like a ton of games without Embiid. It's probably going to be tougher than Sixers to catch New York. So if you're the Knicks, you're going to have home court at least in the first round. So, again, with these upgrades, I think they should go for the 2 seed if they can do it.
Yeah, they should make a push for it.
Yeah, like I don't know, when those other guys are going to come back. Um, but their schedule isn't like, too bonkers, right? Like there are some tough matchups in there. Um, but at the same time, if they can win a good chunk of these games, especially if you can get Anunoby back, maybe hopefully get Randall back at some point, like, they could potentially be like a top 3 seed. And if you're a top 3 seed in the East, right, then that's nice. Now, obviously, you could be in a rough spot where it's like, let's say Philly 6 and B comes back, you're 3, and then you have to play him in the first round. So that's not necessarily
Yeah,
great.
that's gonna be a
But
dogfight.
yeah, but again, like you just got to win games,
Yeah,
because
that's all it
again, then
comes down to.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Because you could also factor in like with the Sixers, unless they just lose every game from here on out, they're probably not going to drop, past like 6.
Yeah,
Because I think they're 5 right now. They have 3 fewer losses than Indiana. But now, like Indiana's got Halliburton back, he's starting to get a little bit more healthy. Because he's kind of been on a minutes restriction as of late. Um, but he got up to 30 minutes the other night, right? So you'd imagine that at some point he'll start getting back to his regular minutes, and they're going to start winning some more games. Because they traded for Siakam and they've been pretty good in that regard. So we'll see, but yeah. But yeah, so it's been pretty quiet, as of late. It's 12:40, so we got about 20 minutes until 1 o'clock. So at that point, you'll have 2 hours until it ends. So it's getting closer to crunch time, right? Like I guess you could say crunch time is like 2 o'clock, because then you have an hour. But still, you would imagine like some of these teams are like thinking of stuff.
yeah, and I'm sure they're fielding calls behind the scenes. Just
Yeah.
obviously people can't hear
So
them.
yeah, so I guess like I guess in terms of like the trades that have happened, which one is kind of the one that like surprised you the most?
Probably the Hayward one.
Mhm.
I didn't think that Charlotte would be moving him, especially considering that they just put out the rumor that they were potentially looking to extend him, I believe. So I would go with
Right.
either Gordon Hayward to the Thunder. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with that one because I didn't see
Yeah.
that one coming at all. And like you said, you literally said on record like he's not gonna get traded, and I agreed with you.
Yeah.
And look at what happened. Lo and behold. So That's mine. What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, it's probably that one. That
Yeah.
one is pretty surprising. Just because, again, like you said, I said on record, I don't think he's going to get traded.
Yeah.
Because it's just we don't normally see that. We don't normally see guys that at this point are overpaid by a decent amount get moved. Especially like to like a really good team, right? Like usually this is a situation where it's like you're a decent team that has a guy that makes a lot of money that isn't really playing, and then
Mhm.
you send him away to somewhere else, right? Like say like the Lakers last year, right? When they had Westbrook, weren't very good, and they moved his salary, right, his expiring salary to get other guys, right? It's not normally a situation where a good team has a guy, can just trades for, a guy in the last year of his deal that's like just okay. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
usually it's like, they might go for it if it's like a really good player, but he's at a certain point in his career where he's not the same. Because like OKC is a good team.
Yeah. Oh, we got another
But I guess
trade. We got a trade.
all
Dennis
right,
Schroeder
so
to the
yeah,
Nets for Spencer Dinwiddie. That's interesting.
very random. It's
Yeah,
random.
that's interesting. I got to think on that one a little bit. I don't like that.
Okay,
Off rip, I don't like it.
so is it possible that the Nets could be flipping Schroeder to another team?
That's what I think. I think they just wanted to get rid of Dinwiddie. I just
Yeah,
don't know
because
why
like
Toronto would buy in on that. But they might also look to flip Dinwiddie too. But he doesn't have a market though.
no, but I mean he's on an expiring contract, but he's also not been very good this season.
What
So
the
and like
freak?
I mean, I guess hadn't they kind of been talking about that? Like he had sort of been like kind of like not like a great locker room guy for the
Yeah,
Nets this year, right? Where it's like he's kind of just like you know
he's collecting a check.
not playing. Like not playing like to the degree that you would like or expect
Yeah.
out of him. But yeah, that might be this might be the funniest trade of the
Yeah, it's
deadline.
between
Just
this
like
one and the Kelly Olynyk one, I think, that are like
yeah,
funny
'cause
wise.
yeah, the Kelly Olynyk Raptors, Jazz, and of course it's the Raptors again. Like I don't
Exactly.
really understand like the logic behind
Right.
the Toronto stuff. Again, we kind of tried to talk about it where I think we were saying something along the lines of like for Toronto, it's like yeah, you got a good backup big man, and like you got Ochai Agbaji, but like also giving up a first is kind of random.
Yeah, that's the
For,
thing that's confusing to me.
yeah, it's just kind of especially it's kind of random for like a guy also in Olynyk who could just leave after the year. I think if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, but but again, if they flip him, then all bets are off, and then I'll be like, okay, that's fine. And then also, I guess we should probably start talking about some of these other guys, right? Who are who have been in rumors, like say a Bruce Brown, right? Like he's a guy that's been in rumors. Um, and so far, he hasn't been moved yet, right? He's a guy where a lot of people have talked about like there are some teams that are interested in him. I don't think there's been like a ton of teams that are interested, and I think some of that is the contract. But we've heard a lot because remember we thought they said he was going to the Knicks, and that's where I thought he was going to go because I don't remember anybody saying anything about Bogdanovich to the Knicks.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's just kind of wild. At least with Detroit, at least they actually did move Bogdanovich. But again, we kind of heard at one point, right, the idea of like, oh, they could have gotten multiple firsts for him, and then it's like you didn't now. Like that's kind of the consequence of just waiting. Like
Yeah.
I still don't really understand why they didn't just move him last year if there was actually the potential for a first round pick to be given to them. Like I would have done that, especially if it's two. If it was
Yeah.
two first round picks that you could have gotten for him, kind of like Dorian Finney-Smith. Like if you actually could have gotten two first round picks for him and you said no, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of in disbelief over this Schroeder deal. I know it's not like the biggest names or anything. It's just
Right.
confusing. It seems so
It's so
odd.
random.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
didn't have
random.
that at all like on my radar. That's funny.
It,
Especially
it's
considering
so
that in our video we literally talked about Dinwiddie has no market, yada yada yada,
yeah.
and then he's one of the first guys in the second hour to be moved.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I saw somebody online, this guy, Sean Davis or whatever. I think he's like a Laker content creator. He reacted to it by saying mid on mid crime.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's a complete lateral, like, and it doesn't make sense to me. And is he even going to play in Toronto? Is he really going to contribute that much? And what is Schroeder going to
I
do in
don't know.
Brooklyn?
I don't
That's
know.
got to
Like
be a flipping thing, right?
it has to be. Like I mean, I guess because Dinwiddie was starting for Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
So I guess like if you're Brooklyn, congrats. This is your new starting point guard. If they're actually going to keep him, but my hope is that if you're Brooklyn, you flip him because otherwise I don't understand it. Like because it's just like again, are you really that? I mean, I guess this season Schroeder's been better than Dinwiddie, but at the
Agreed.
same time, like, does it change like who you are by
No.
any amount? No, not really. Like, but if you get something back for Dennis, yeah, Xander Cade, Dennis the Menace, yeah, he's made a name for himself. The last couple of seasons, right, where it's like he famously turned down the money, from LA because he thought he was going to get more. Actually got significantly less.
Yeah.
And had to settle for what, like 3.5 or 5 million or whatever
Which is
from
crazy,
Boston.
man.
Then they traded him away to Houston and then went to the finals. And then he took a minimum from the Lakers and initially he was starting, right? He was starting like with Patrick Beverly. Like it was like Dennis Schroeder, Patrick Beverly, Lonnie Walker, right? That was probably the worst back. Oh, we got another one. Let's see.
Dennis Smith Jr. Headed to the Raptors in
Okay.
the trade. Oh, in the trade, and Thaddeus Young is coming to the Nets. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better, but not really. Not really.
Okay, so if you're the Raptors, you get Dennis Smith Jr. And you get Spencer Dinwiddie, and then if you're the Nets, you get Thaddeus Young, and then you also get Dennis Schroeder.
I mean, yeah, you get a guard room for Toronto. It makes me feel better about Toronto for sure because I do like Dennis Smith Jr. and I think he might be an upgrade over Schroeder, but still, it's not
athletic defensive guard.
It's not earth shattering though. But that's not what we were expecting. We were expecting guys of this caliber to be moved. It's just I don't understand the fits necessarily, but hey, it is what it is.
At the very least, it makes a lot more sense for Toronto now than it did before. Because at least you can say, like, okay, we got a young prospect. Well, he's not that young anymore, but, like, you got a different look at the point guard spot. And you were able to move Thaddeus Young, who's getting up there in terms of years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in the league since, like, I mean, is it like 2010? I mean, it
has to be.
Like 2009, 2000. Let me see. He's 35. He was drafted. Okay, so 2007. My bad. I thought it was earlier. Yeah, 2007. He's been in the league since 2007. That was a year before I think Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
Right, because Derrick Rose was the number 1 pick in 2008, and Young was the 12th pick in 2007. That was the Durant draft or Greg Oden draft. So I mean, he's getting up there.
Yeah.
In years.
I mean, he's probably not going to play in Brooklyn either, so.
Yeah. It says, Woj said to clarify that Young is coming to the Nets in the trade with Dennis Schroeder. I don't know why Dennis is in all caps, but okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah, but it makes more sense, from the Raptors' perspective now than whatever the heck that first thing was. And that's why, that's the thing that's kind of annoying sometimes with trades is that, like, we don't always get the information about it until a little bit later. So it's like that when that first thing came in, it was like, okay, what are we doing? And then once the second half of it came in, it was like, okay, that makes more sense.
You feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah. So for the Raptors, they get Dinwiddie, who also goes by other nicknames that I've heard.
Yeah. Courtesy of Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, that apparently aren't that kind. So where does that stem from? Because I've met Spencer Dinwiddie, who's a nice guy. Took a picture with him. Like, where does that come from? Like, the Kuzma. Yeah, like, is it because like he signed with the Wizards and like it didn't go that great? Like, what does that stem from?
So remember, Dinwiddie was on the Wizards, right?
Yeah, right.
So I think Dinwiddie went on a podcast or whatever, and they were talking. He was talking about his time in Washington, and he was like, "Yeah, those guys don't know how to win." So he's throwing shots at Washington's locker room. Then all of a sudden, he's like, some guys are focused more on things that aren't basketball, like fashion and music and money and stuff. And then Kuzma replied to that pretty much and called him, you know what it is. I'm not going to say it because we're trying to be like, PG here and family friendly, but it is what it is. And then that kind of sparked the whole beef. And then I think it was what's his name? Goodness, I think it was Dinwiddie who also said something about the money that Kuzma had acquired in that extension or whatever, and then that kind of sparked even more beef.
Yeah.
So it was just locker room stuff, I think, that had transpired from previous seasons when they played together in Washington. But it was a dumb beef. But I will say the nickname is hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody online said when the computer teams trade with each other in 2K.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I would say. Like it works, but is it the best move available? It doesn't seem like a human with a brain kind of created that trade, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's something. It's definitely
Yeah.
something. But
Let me look at the replies under this stuff. Let me see what people are saying about it. Okay, yeah,
yeah.
this is interesting. This is a Marshawn Brooks / Dylan Brooks situation.
Mhm.
I don't think
Okay.
that's a good deal. Spencer's getting waived.
Yeah, Jake Fisher says, I'm told Spencer Dinwiddie did not request a trade from Brooklyn, but it certainly sounded like Dinwiddie's exit from the Nets was welcomed by both sides.
Okay.
Which again is, we had kind of heard, different things from different people about the idea that like, it's not going great over there.
Yeah. People are getting on Woj for emphasizing Dennis. Like they got Luka. Schroeder bought out and back to the Lakers.
Yeah, I don't. He's not getting bought out because I think he's on like a 2-year deal, if I'm not mistaken, right? So he's on a usually when you get bought out, you're not getting bought out if you have like multiple years on your deal. Like it's happened a couple of times, but not a lot. Because then, if the team that buys him out does that, then they have to pay multiple years for the guy, and usually like it makes the most sense, for one. So unless he's either staying in Brooklyn, through the rest of the season, or he's getting flipped.
Yeah.
But I think
people are hating on this a lot. Moves make no sense for either team. The Raptors always confuse me at the deadline. This is the most mid trade I've ever seen. Dennis the Menace to Brooklyn. People are hating on this, bro.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I'm hating on it too.
I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But again, I'm kind of waiting to see whether or not like is one of these guys getting flipped, right? So like if you're Brooklyn and you're able to flip Dennis to some other team, like if you flip him to like the Bucks or if you flip him to anywhere else, right? Then it's like that's fine. But
agreed.
As it stands, it's kind of weird for sure.
Yeah, I think this is my least favorite trade so far.
Yeah, yeah. Like and again, some of it kind of depends on what ends up happening. Between now and 3 p.m. because we're still kind of at a point where it's like there's still time for stuff. But also, like there's a decent amount of these guys like are being put in like multiple deals, right? Where it's like the Knicks one, where it's like Bogdanovich and Burks, right? Those are going to be two separate deals. It's not like one big trade; it's multiple trades. Because I think in terms of the rules, you can't aggregate guys into a trade that have already been traded until a certain amount of time has passed. And so like, and not enough time has passed between like when Malachi Flynn was traded, between when he was in Toronto. Oh, okay.
Yeah, what?
Xander Cade put in the name in the chat.
Oh my god, yeah, that might be an all-time nickname. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, it's something. I mean, I guess you could call it creative, but at the same time, can I really?
It was funny.
It was definitely unexpected. I did not expect it at all because it's one of the most unexpected NBA beefs I can remember.
Yeah,
like because it's just like it's not like because like we've heard of beefs between like big time stars, or like long time better like remember there was a beef between Chris Paul and Rondo, right? And I mean I'm assuming there still is, but like there was beef between those two guys, and those two guys at one point were like all stars.
Yep.
And then versus like two guys that are like they're good players but they're not all stars.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's got to come from locker room stuff. I just can't believe the Knicks added literally 40% 3-point shooters like that. That's ridiculous.
And you
practically gave up nothing for them.
Yeah, I mean, the only rotational guy they gave up is Grimes, right? Because again, Fournier wasn't playing. We knew he was going to get moved. I guess the question is, do you like this better than like if they had just gotten Bruce Brown?
Yeah, I like this a lot better.
Okay.
Because like you said, it's going to help out their lineup tremendously because you have like 2 floor spacing guys who are, like I said, literally 240% 3-point shooters, and that's going to help them out big time because I think that's one spot where they've struggled. And I think, everybody saw it against, the Lakers. Like sometimes the 3-point shot doesn't fall, and when it doesn't fall, it can get a little nasty because, there's only so much that tenacity and, hustle can really give you. So, adding consistent shooters is definitely going to help them a lot. And I
Yeah.
think that I would take consistent shooters, and especially 2 of them, over one Bruce Brown,
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, and it's like Burks, can do some stuff defensively, and he's
Mhm.
already been with the Knicks before. Like he's not Bruce Brown, but it's
Right.
like, I mean, like you said, you're getting 2 guys as opposed to like one expensive guy.
Right.
So, and that's kind of where I'm curious with Toronto. Like, what do they do with Bruce Brown? Because again, like, does he still get moved? I know Jake Fisher. I think it was last night. It says the Detroit Pistons are waiving Joe Harris.
Yeah, I
So
see
I
that.
guess like, yeah. So I think because they brought in a lot of players, so they're gonna have to, they're gonna have to start cutting some guys. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, has he even done anything this season? His fall off
I
needs
don't,
to be studied.
I don't think he's really played.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I thought.
I think he might have been hurt. So I don't think he's really done a whole lot this year. Yeah, like if you look at his stats, this season he's averaging 2 points, 36 from the field, 33 from three in 16 games.
Geez.
Yeah, and according to Basketball Reference, his nicknames are Joey Hoops and Beef Jerky Joe,
Oh
which I've
wow.
never heard of. Yeah, I've never heard of that. Um, but either way, yeah, like I mean, in general, unless it's like, a big time guy, like, give me multiple players as opposed to just one,
Yeah, agreed.
especially if like those multiple guys can still play. It's
Agreed.
not like you're getting like, multiple guys and like only one of them is a real rotational guy.
Yeah, agreed.
So, but yeah, like, do you think Bruce Brown ends up going anywhere?
Hmm. I've heard some interesting things now that we
Yeah,
can
because
kind
I
of
was gonna
cross
say,
off the Knicks.
yeah, because I
I
was
think
gonna
he'll get
say Jake
moved.
Fisher. Yeah, because I was gonna say Jake Fisher last night in his article mentioned the idea of maybe Utah trading
I
for him.
heard.
But can they do that now? Because I mean, they already moved Olynyk. Maybe I guess if it's like Clarkson, but I think it would have to be Clarkson plus something else if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken. So
that's the tough part. Yeah, he might not get moved. If he doesn't get moved, that's something to watch for sure. Because I'm intrigued. What they're gonna do with him. But
yeah, and again, I think the tough part for him is also the salary because it's like he's making over $20 million or whatever, and that's kind of a lot, for a team to just bring in. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
hmm
Like
like you'd
that.
have to
I mean,
make
like,
prior moves and clear some salary before you can probably bring him in. Because I think
or even
that puts him like in that category where not just anybody can take him.
right, yeah, because yeah, you're either a team like the Knicks, right, that had of Guy and Fournier who wasn't playing on a big contract, or you'd have to trade a significant player on your roster, to bring him in.
Think
Like
of it
let's say
like
like
the OKC trade today, like for
yeah,
Hayward.
exactly. Yeah, like with OKC, yeah, they were able to give up guys who weren't playing. So it was like, that's a no-brainer.
Yep.
Bring in a guy who's better than the guys that weren't playing at all, who's also a veteran, who's been in big playoff games, right?
Yep.
But say like if you're, LA, right? If you're trading for Bruce Brown, you'd have to give up, one of their like, guys that plays a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like you'd have to give up, D'Lo plus something or like Rui plus something, and
Yeah.
that's a lot, for Bruce Brown.
Yeah.
And it's not that Bruce Brown is bad, but is he worth giving up like a starter,
Right.
to bring him in? Like you'd be better off if you're a team, trading away bench guys to bring him in.
Yeah.
If you have those type of contracts, but not every team does.
Yeah. I think it's that $20 million tag on him that's probably holding teams back from
Right.
acquiring him.
Yeah. And like say, for a Joe Harris, well now he's waived. He could go to a team for the minimum,
Yeah.
but like, how many teams, want him? I mean, I guess for like the veteran minimum, like that's fine. But like, again, he's a guy that come playoff time, like you said, is well, I don't think you said it, but like right? Like
Yeah.
come playoff time, he's usually much less effective, Joe
Sure.
Harris.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we
obviously,
saw that in Brooklyn, man.
yeah. Like, I mean, and again, like that's kind of the downside of guys where like all they mainly are just outside shooters because sometimes the shot doesn't fall. And if it doesn't fall and you don't provide much else, it can be problematic.
Yeah. Um. Let's see. So I guess for the Joe Harris thing, I'm
Hmm.
looking at Keith Smith tweeted this out. Joe Harris waiver is one of few to come from the Pistons to complete their roster moves.
Right.
And then as
Yeah.
Harris makes 19.9 million for this season, he'll be unable to sign with any team that is over that first apron.
Right. So
Um,
yeah, so that's what we had been talking about,
yeah,
where like some of these buyout guys are not going to be able to sign with the big boy teams, right? Because again, the teams in the second apron are all basically most of the top teams aside from Golden State, right? I
yeah.
think the last time we talked about it, right, I'm pretty sure it was like Denver, the Clippers, I think Golden State, I want to say Boston as well, right? I think Miami and a couple other teams in there as well. So like, that makes it tough. But say for a team, yeah, so Boston, Denver, Golden State, the Clippers, the Heat, the Bucks, and the Suns. So those teams can't sign those type of guys if they make a lot of money. Like let's say if Hayward got bought out instead of getting traded, they couldn't. Those teams couldn't get him. And I guess it kind of, is kind of funny because actually, when I woke up, there was a notification about that Hayward wasn't going to get bought out. But it was more so like if he doesn't get traded.
Right.
You know, we didn't think he was going to get traded, and now
Hmm.
here we are. So just kind of funny, but either way, yeah. So, but at the same time, like usually buyout guys, I don't think normally go to like middling teams unless it's like a situation where where they know they're gonna play a lot. So that's the issue, right? And but like most of the teams, oh, we got another trade. PJ Washington
Well, this is a
is
big deal.
going to Dallas
Oh
for Grant
wow.
Williams, Seth Curry, and a first. So that was another guy that we talked about. And we weren't sure whether or not he was going to get traded, but if you're Dallas, you got PJ Washington. That's another backup big man. Um, you know, and you just gave up Grant Williams, Seth Curry in the first. I think that's pretty solid. I
I think
mean,
we like
again, I
that.
don't know. Yeah, I think he's better than Grant Williams for sure. Um, I think he probably provides a little bit more versatility. Um, I mean, at the same time, he's still kind of like mainly like a stretch big who's not shot that well from three. So I think you're kind of hoping maybe you can get him on like a hot stretch, right? Or like maybe like, oh, he's gonna get a ton of open shots playing next to Luca
Yeah.
and Kyrie. So that ought to help. So,
Wow. I
but either
really like
way,
this.
yeah. So in other words, like Dallas did a good job. Because again, you got, two upgrades in the front court and you didn't really have to give up much of anything, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not giving up Hardaway. You didn't really have to give up any of your young guys. It was Grant Williams, and we talked about like Grant Williams may be on the move because his name was involved in so many rumors, and he hadn't played as well as of late. So it was
Yeah.
like you're getting a guy who hopefully he might be better. Like do you feel it? Do you think PJ Washington is better than Grant Williams?
100%. This is definitely an upgrade. And then, like you said, you're giving up Seth Curry as well in a first round pick, which I think is cool because I think, Charlotte would be expecting a first round pick for PJ Washington. I think that was kind of the
Hmm.
expectation. And then
Hmm.
Dallas's, first round pick is going to be probably mid, I think, at best, because, I mean, they're sitting at eighth right now, but I think,
They have a chance to improve.
exactly. Give them time, and I think they could probably climb the standings, by the time the season's over. So I think you feel good about this for both sides. You get a first round pick, you get Grant Williams, who could be an impact player. You get Seth Curry, who can also be an impact player, and potentially, I guess Seth Curry could also be flipped as well. Um,
Hmm.
but then, obviously Dallas, you get PJ Washington, and like you said, coupled with Daniel Gafford, that's really good because you got a forward that can shoot the ball and do some other things with it, and then obviously you got Gafford who can be a pick and roll piece as well. So I'm loving this a lot, and I think Luka will probably make PJ Washington look even better than what we've seen from him on Charlotte.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is that, like it's kind of hard, I think, to find, some of these guys, that can play next to Luca because, his style of play, is one where he does have the ball a lot. You kind of have to, kind of get out of the way. But, for a guy like a PJ Washington, you would think that would be okay because, you don't really want him like, creating a ton.
Right.
You kind of want his role to be pretty simplified. So you hope that like that's a guy that can fit next to him. So now you got Washington. You got Lively still, right? You have Gafford. So now you got a much better, you got better options at the front court spot. Because before it was like Kleba, it was Powell, it was Lively, right? It was kind of rough, right? Once you get
Yeah.
past Lively. But now you have multiple options because you have like, a small ball stretch big, right? You have, kind of like a bruising athletic big, and then you have, apparently some people are saying the Gafford thing isn't done yet, but we'll see. Um, and then you have, the other guy that we mentioned, so
Yeah.
Lively. So, in terms of like that, the athletic guy, it's kind of, that runs the floor, right? Because the other guys, I don't think do that quite as much. Mavs trying to win it all this year, making big moves. I mean, so it's a lightly protected 2027 first round pick. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
I
Whatever.
feel even better about
Um,
that for Dallas then.
yeah, like it's whatever. I mean, for the Mavs trying to win it all this year, I mean, again, you have a guy that's a top 5 player. So if you have a top 5 player on your team, then you got to do what you can to be able to improve the team and put them in a position to try to do something. Even if Dallas doesn't win the title, it's a better team than what they had before.
Yeah.
So, and you never know, right? Because again, he's the type of guy where like, if he gets hot and he gets it going in a series, he can win you a playoff series, like basically like, in terms of a solo heroic effort.
Yeah.
Like obviously you need other guys along for, yeah, and obviously you need other guys along for the ride. But again, like we've seen him be able to, show up, in big games, right? We know he has that in him. So, if you're Dallas, you do that 100%. And again, it's not like you gave anybody of significance. It's Grant Williams, it's Seth Curry, and whoever else it was in the Gafford trade, right? I think it was Holmes, right?
Yeah.
Like none of those guys were playing. So,
and I guess we got to feel good about it because we did mention, that PJ Washington should be on Dallas's radar, and lo and behold, they delivered handsomely. I think so. I think that also crosses out Kuzma as well. So there's probably no shot that they get
yeah,
Kuzma. So I'm curious to see what other teams are fielding offers for Kuzma. I doubt there's probably that much left at this point. So
yeah.
that's a guy that probably won't be moved. But I think this has been an intriguing deadline because we've seen a lot of role players and a lot of impact players that can potentially change a lot of these playoff teams' aspirations.
Right. And according to Mark Stein, they mentioned the Mavericks are trading their last available first round pick to Charlotte. But they did manage to keep Josh Green out of the trade. And that's a young guy where, like, again, he hasn't had a great season this year, but at
Yeah.
the same time, you avoided giving him up. So then, like, down the road, maybe like there's a situation where if there's somebody else, say, like in the offseason that you want, and instead of giving up a pick, you could give him up, and then maybe that whatever team that is, maybe like that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll take him.
Because I thought
So,
that like
but
a guy like Harden or Hardy would have been involved in this, but hey, if you're giving up, Seth Curry, I think you got to feel pretty good about this.
right, because again, that was a guy that was not always playing. You didn't
Right.
give up any of your young guys, and all you gave up was, I mean, that's your last available first, I guess, to trade or whatever. Because they gave up some for Kyrie, and I think they gave up one or two for Porzingis, so they don't have a lot of first left.
Yeah.
But again, with Luka, you're kind of not really prioritizing a ton of young talent, right? Like you're kind of trying to get guys that are ready to play with him and play and impact the game now, as opposed to down the road, right? Like a guys like I don't know, whoever the 2027 first is, right? Down the road, that could be a really good player, but
True.
we're still not going to know for several seasons.
Yep.
Because even then, like how often does, a late first round pick, turn into like a starting caliber guy in year one?
Yeah.
Right? Like that doesn't happen a whole lot. So,
Yeah.
if you're Dallas, that makes a perfect sense. So they've done a really good job, kind of flipping stuff around, right? Because, it was pretty tough, right, when they lost Brunson for nothing, which still hurts, right? Because I'd rather still have Brunson, and be able to do all that other stuff on the peripheral. But this isn't a bad, plan B or whatever it is, right? Where you have Kyrie, who's still good. He's not really caused any trouble this year.
Mm-hmm.
He's been good. And then you add in these other guys, right? Like, you have a chance to, make a run. And that's what you at least got to do. Because again, like the teams at the top are really good, but still, they're not. This is not, the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors from 2017, 2018, right? Like this is different. These teams are really good, but you have a chance if you make a run and make some noise and get hot. Like, I mean, you could do something.
Yeah.
So if you have a chance, do it.
Yeah. This is definitely an upgrade. I like this a lot.
Yeah, and we got from Mark Stein that Dallas is acquiring OKC's second least favorable first round pick in the 2024 draft.
Okay.
this June to send to Washington. So it's like one of OKC's, treasure trove of first round picks.
Yeah.
And it's the second least favorable. So it's like it's not really a whole lot.
Yeah.
But
And
and then
that's going where?
that's going to Charlotte.
Okay.
Or no, they're sending it to Washington in the Gafford trade.
Okay.
So that's still
W.
going down.
W. Big
'Cause I think
W.
yeah, so Washington's getting a first. Not like a crazy first, but
Yeah.
still better than nothing.
Big W.
And that's kind of something that we should also discuss, the trades from like Washington and Charlotte's perspectives, where you factor in a team like a Washington, right, which doesn't have a lot of, top tier talent right now.
Right.
They're in the midst of a rebuild.
Mhm.
So you got to try to get back what you can for some of these guys, get some first if you
Yes.
can. And do what you can, to kind of make the rebuild, a little bit easier, right? Because they're in it for the long haul, at
Yeah.
this point, right? Where, next year's draft or this upcoming draft isn't supposed to be all that great. And they do have some guys that I think teams will want. We'll see if they move some of these other dudes, but for now, like, again, for now, like you at least moved one of those guys and got something back in terms of a pick, right? Like that's better than nothing. Right? Like you got a first for Daniel Gafford, which, I probably wouldn't have necessarily always expected, right?
Yeah.
Because like it felt like that teams may just trade some seconds, but like you got something. So
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. And
And
the
then
Wizards are one of those teams where, and Charlotte too, where they need to be valuing, first round picks. Like, other teams, like we've seen a plethora of second rounds be moved, like, 3 in some cases. But, the Wizards, they don't really need second rounds. They need first rounds. So I'm happy about it.
yeah, exactly. So, and then from Charlotte's perspective, right? Like they've done a really good job, I think, as well, because you're trading all these guys that you don't really, need anymore. Not that like you don't want talent, but like, you're getting stuff back for, players that can help these teams. Because again, say like a guy like PJ Washington, he's not quite as young as you think at this point, right?
Right.
Not that he's, a dinosaur, or anything like that. But age wise, he is, I think, 25, right? So I think, he's kind of getting to a point where, he's going to be 26, I think, in August. So he's at a point where, like, timeline wise, again, not that that's old or anything, but you've already paid him, and he's probably not going to be like a real part of your future, right? Like at this point, if you're Charlotte, like almost everybody on that team, I think, should be available for trade, and they actually were able to. All right.
Brooklyn is finalizing a trade, sending Royce O'Neal to Phoenix for salaries and 3 second round picks. And what did I say?
Okay.
3 second round picks. Like that's kind of the meta, for contending teams and teams that are a little bit higher than the ones that are rebuilding. So,
Right.
What do we think of this one?
I
need full details.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would need to know who's going out. I mean, it's okay. I mean, I guess it's better than what you had before. The only thing about Royce O'Neal that I don't really like as much is he's a lot more undersized than I kind of remember him being.
Sure.
He's like 6'4",
really?
which is
I
pretty
he was
small.
Like 6'6".
That's what I thought too, but he's like listed as 6'4". So that's pretty small, for like a wing guy. Again, he's a decent defender. I don't think he's been like quite as good as he was like in Utah. I mean, he's been okay, but like, 7 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 39 from the field, 37 from 3. So that kind of suggests that he's, primarily just an outside shooter.
Yeah.
And not a great one. I mean, I guess wing wise, it's better than what you probably had because they didn't really have any real wings. I mean, they were playing like Grayson Allen, at small forward, who's been playing very well, but still he's not really a wing. And then they've kind of tried to patch it up, with other guys. So my guess is it's probably Nasir Little, right?
I would think so. I mean, who else would they be moving?
But then if it says salaries, right, then that would suggest that it may be somebody else.
I mean,
right? Like it may be like salaries that add up to his that add up to his contract. Maybe not necessarily Nasir Little. I think he makes I think his contract right now this year he's earning like $9.5 million. So I think that's not a lot. And I'm trying to remember. I think Nasir Little's contract is it's a little more, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So if we look at the Suns in terms of their contracts and salaries, right?
Nasir is like 6.2 mil.
Okay, Nasir Little's okay, so he's making less. So then that would have to mean that it's going to be, either Nasir Little or it could be some of those minimum contracts, right?
Yeah,
Like if they were able to move like some of those minimum contract guys and just stack them up and then get Royce O'Neal, that would be probably better.
yeah. So
Um,
like Damian Lee, guys like that.
yeah, like if it was like Damian Lee, Yuta Watanabe plus like another, because those guys are making like what 2 million,
Yeah,
3 million or something.
yeah.
But he makes
Eubanks. I doubt Eubanks
yeah,
goes
but
though.
but if he makes like 9.5, that would be a lot. So it probably would have to be Nasir Little, but then
And
it's Nasir
somebody
Little
else.
plus Nasir Little plus somebody else. So that's what I think it
What if
is. It
it's
would be
Nasir
kind of nice.
Little and Bol Bol? That's hilarious. I doubt it though.
Oh, it was.
No, I'm saying that would be funny if it was.
Oh yeah, that would be funny. Yeah, I thought you were actually saying it
No,
was
no,
Nasir Little.
no.
Yeah,
I was
that'd be
saying if
funny.
it was, that would be wild.
Yeah, but but we haven't got anything about out. We haven't gotten anything from it yet, so we don't know. And that's kind of the thing when it comes to trades, right? Where it's like they don't always put the stuff out immediately, like because again, they're getting the information right then and there.
Yeah.
So like
As a
but yeah,
as a
mhm.
Lakers fan, are you kind of disappointed so far, or are you kind of just
Well,
hoping
the
and
funny
waiting?
thing was, the funny thing is that a lot of people that had been covering the team, had kind of sort of, I think, like in a way, kind of like preparing a lot of fans for the fact that they're probably not going to do a whole lot.
Okay.
Um, because I think, which isn't good, right? But at the same time, like I was kind of preparing for not really a whole lot happening.
Okay.
Because like when I'm thinking about it, like from that perspective, I would hope that they would do something, but at the same time, like again, cost wise, like what is out there that's worth giving up like a ton of stuff at this point, right? Because I don't, because again, when you factor in these guys that are available, a lot of these guys you'd have to give up one of the main, not main, but like a significant guy on your roster. Um, and some of them I would be okay with doing, but I don't know how they feel about it. Oh, we got another one. Memphis is sending David Roddy to the Suns for a pick swap as part of a three-way with Phoenix and Brooklyn. Um, Personally, I'm not a big fan of David Roddy. I mean, but
Me
at the same
neither.
time, I guess it's a wing. I mean, I remember him on Memphis against the Lakers, and I don't remember him doing a whole lot. I think he had like one decent game, but I just remember them leaving him open a ton and not really delivering. But, again, in fairness, I haven't watched like a ton of Memphis games, since Ja went down. So maybe he's playing well, better for Memphis this year. We saw him in the summer league and he looked okay, I guess. But
Yeah.
like again, he had already been in the league for a little bit longer. I think he's shooting 30% from three. So
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's like a better version of Ish Wainwright. I don't know, but like, you
Yeah.
got you got you got another wing. But it's like then when you factor in Phoenix, what could they really do? You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah. Their
Miles
hands are
Bridges isn't
tied.
coming, yeah, because like if Miles Bridges isn't coming, then it's like how is that going to work, right? You know what I mean? Like because like what else can you really do?
Yeah.
So that's the issue. But back to the Lakers thing, and then we'll get back to the Charlotte thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know because again, like if it's not Dejounte Murray, what else is available? The only other thing maybe is Dorian Finney-Smith. But after that, like I'm not giving up a first for Tyus Jones. Like I don't think
Not at
that
this
makes a whole
point.
lot of sense. Like
No.
to me, like yeah, like that doesn't make any sense. Um, I wouldn't mind one for Dorian Finney-Smith, but then the issue is that like, so you're moving D'Lo for DFS, or are you moving Rui for DFS, or is it Gabe Vincent? Because he doesn't make a ton.
Right.
But then it doesn't sound like a lot of teams want Gabe Vincent because he's been hurt and he hasn't played, and he's on a 3-year deal. So that's an issue there. Um, but I guess, I don't know. Like, I don't really expect them to do a whole lot. It doesn't
Okay.
seem like it. I mean, obviously there's still time left, but I don't really think they're gonna do much. But I could be wrong. And then going back to Charlotte, like you moved a bunch of guys that you don't really need, right? Like, and they were actually able to do it because, like, I didn't expect them to be able to trade Gordon Hayward.
Yeah. I didn't think
Um,
anybody was like sold on him.
yeah, like I didn't expect that at all. I thought he might have to get bought out, but you actually were able to trade him, get some young players back. You traded PJ Washington away. You didn't really get any young guys back, but you got a pick. So it's like that's good. That's really good for Charlotte because again, they've been kind of a laughing stock for a while. And like to me, again, I don't think anybody on that roster is safe other than like Brandon Miller. Um, and then I don't
LaMelo.
think they would trade. Huh? You said
LaMelo.
Lamelo?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think he's going to get traded. I mean, the LaMelo experience, it's been tough because he's been hurt so much, but I don't
Mhm.
expect them to trade him. I think they see him as a cornerstone, and they just gave him an extension. And then Mark Williams, he's barely played because he's had a back injury. But
Right.
I think when he's played, I think they've liked what they've seen from him. Um, but now I think with Phoenix, I guess my assumption is that probably buyout market for them.
Yeah.
Um,
They have 2 roster
and
spots open now.
I think Shams. Yeah, I just see it right now. Shams is saying that, and then also they retain, some assets, right? But again, what are they moving Royce O'Neal for? Or what are they
Um,
getting? What are they moving Royce O'Neal for, or getting him for?
I think David Roddy.
But David Roddy was for Memphis. Like I think they're getting both of those. They're getting both of those guys.
So then for a pick swap as part of a 3-way for Phoenix and Brooklyn. What on earth?
Yeah,
What the heck are they
yeah. So
getting
like,
back?
that's the thing. Because they said trading Royce O'Neal for salaries, but like, what are the salaries? Like, we don't know yet. So, but either way, um, if they got those two guys, right, then that probably means it would have to be like Nasir Little. So I mean, like that's fine. Like, I mean, I'm not saying Royce O'Neal is bad. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's better than what you had.
Mhm.
Um, again, he's a solid defender, but I also like, if I'm Phoenix, I would like somebody a little bit bigger. I mean,
Yeah.
Roddy, I guess, is technically bigger. He's not taller
Bro, but he's
necessarily. He's
not
big.
that good. Like,
Yeah. I mean, but
not trying to be mean or anything, but like I've
right.
seen him play in person, and there's nothing like there's not a wow factor. And I get it, he's a late first round pick, so and he's very young. This is his second season, so maybe
Yeah.
there's room to grow. But as of right now, I think David Roddy is like 6'4", but he's just 255.
Yeah. But again, I guess from Phoenix perspective, it's probably better than whatever minimum contracts than whatever guys they gave up.
Sure.
Because Nasir Little wasn't doing a whole lot.
Right.
Like he's a veteran and he's been on playoff teams, so it's better than what you had before. I just wish he wasn't 6'4". If he
Yeah.
was like 6'7", that would be like amazing. But again, beggars can't really be choosers because when you're a team like Phoenix, you don't have the assets to be able to do a whole lot. And that's where from the Lakers fan perspective, that's where you'd be kind of disappointed because you're like, even Phoenix, with as limited assets as they have, were able to do something.
That's my
right? Like I
point.
think
Like I'm waiting for the
like
Lakers, bro.
right, like I think you would at least say, you know, Phoenix got better, right? I think you can at least say that.
Mm-hmm.
How much better, you don't know, but like at the same time, like it's better than nothing, right? It's better than what they had.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the disappointing part. Um, but again, like we've been here before, like because I mean, like there have been years where like they don't make any trades. Like the first year with Westbrook, they didn't do anything at the deadline, right? Like they didn't make any trades. Um, so who knows? But so far, like I think there's been probably, I guess, quote unquote, more movement than we probably may have thought, including guys that we didn't expect to get traded. Um, but at the same time, like I'm curious to see what else happens because we still have an hour and a half left before the deadline ends. This deadline blows. That's
I mean,
funny.
like in terms of quality and the players that have been moved, I can
Right.
agree with you there. But like it's kind of what we expected. So
Yeah, that's the thing. Like we've been prepping everybody, for a while that like this was not going to be a trade deadline where stars get moved. It was going to be a trade deadline, where it's a lot of role players. Which again, for say like content creators, it's kind of rough, right? Because ideally, like you'd like for stars to get moved because there's a lot more to talk about, from a star perspective than role players. But this is kind of what we were getting, and this may be kind of the norm for the trade deadline, which is kind of rough because the trade deadline is usually like other than the playoffs, right? The biggest time of the year for the NBA, right? Because like there's
Yes, sir.
always big trades that happen. But there's a lot of that has changed, right? Like the CBA is different. So because of that, right, like teams may be a little bit more hesitant to do certain types of things, although we've seen some of these other teams be active. And then you factor in like, a lot of trades already happened in the offseason and early in the season, right? OG Anunoby, Siakam, Porzingis, Holiday, right? Like a lot of guys. So it's like, who's left? And then also like, that's the other part. The third aspect is like the guys that are available right now are not like, they're not stars. Like they're good players, they're quality players, but they're not guys that again, are they life changing? Probably not.
Right.
But again, like if you're Dallas and you're like and you come out of this trade deadline with the guys you have, like you jump for joy in the front office, right? Because like you got better. You got guys that are better than what you had before. If you're Charlotte, you didn't get back any, real players. But guess what? You moved on from a lot of guys that you probably should have been moved on from, and you still got something. You got better than nothing. Like that, that's where and that's kind of the disappointing aspect. Like if let's say if you're like the Atlanta Hawks and you come out of this deadline doing absolutely nothing, like wouldn't that be kind of disappointing? Like if you're the Hawks, because again, Charlotte, they didn't hold on to PJ Washington and say like, oh, we have to keep this guy.
Right.
No, they moved him and got a pick.
Yeah.
And like that's the thing, like from Atlanta's perspective. Let's say you keep DeJounte Murray, which again, like we talked about it, we don't really know why they would have like done that for like so little. Like, you know what I mean? Like that wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense. But at the same time, what's the likelihood that you get more for him in the offseason than you do right now? Like
Bite
I
the
don't
bullet,
know.
man. You have to.
Right. Exactly. Like that's the issue, And then say like from the Lakers perspective, right? They already put like stuff out like, oh, they're gonna they don't want to give up their 2029 pick right now because they want to because then they'll have 3 picks in the offseason and then they're gonna use it to get what was it? It was like Donovan Mitchell or Trae Young or whatever. And it's like, okay. Like I've heard that multiple times and that hasn't been the case.
Mm-hmm.
Like and I like because again, it's like assets wise. Like, let's say Donovan Mitchell or Trae Young asked for a trade, right? Like, Donovan Mitchell, the Cavs have been really good. So, unless he just doesn't want to stay there, which is certainly possible, like, I don't think that would happen right now.
Right.
But, like, if he were to ask for a trade, I just don't feel like assets-wise they would be, like, at the front of the line. Unless he specifically said, I want out and I want to go to LA. Unless that were to happen, like, I feel like there's other teams that could match that.
Agreed.
So yeah, it's kind of weird, but again, like that's what happens. So I think there will be, as a result, there are going to be some teams that I think are that are empty-handed. I think one thing that I will guarantee from the Lakers' perspective is they will make a move. I think to duck the luxury tax because I think they're kind of close to it. So I think they'll like probably move like some minimum salary, right, and like get under the luxury tax, create a roster spot, right? Like it could be like a Jackson Hayes or a Christian Wood, somebody on a minimum contract, right? Like that's probably all I can really guarantee. I can't really guarantee anything else.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where we are at this point.
Yeah, so I guess
we're at 1:30, so you got about an hour and a half left until the deadline is officially over. But like you said, there'll be stuff probably coming in waves a little bit after.
Yeah, so I mean. I guess so. Whose trade deadline do you like more, the Knicks or the Mavs?
After PJ, I gotta go with the Mavs. I know that's probably like the unpopular opinion because I'm really high on the Knicks, but I think I really like the Mavs because they solved their front court issues in a matter of 1 hour, I believe. So, they got Daniel Gafford, like I said, who's going to be a pick and roll threat. And then you have PJ Washington, who I think Luka will make look even better. So I'm really hyped for the Mavs, and I think they'll climb the standings after this because, they've added some depth. But then, like, if you look at it from the Knicks perspective, like, you added those 2 knockdown shooters, and that's something that they desperately needed in situations. So you got to feel good about both, but I'm going to go with the Mavs.
Right, because their needs were kind of opposites because, Dallas needed size and defense. And again, are those guys elite defenders? No, but I mean, they do give you more size, so it gives you a little bit more baseline level of like, rebounding, rim protection. Because the rebounding is another issue for them because it's such a small team that doesn't have like a lot of great rebounders. And then from the Knicks' perspective, right, they needed more offense because they were already set defensively.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, like I do like Dallas's stuff and the Knicks. I'm almost kind of like border. You said Knicks, yeah, because like. I guess my thought process is I felt like the Knicks were already a better team and they got better. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's where I would probably lean a little more towards Knicks, but I do like both of them. Yeah. So, because that's the issue. Because, like, Dallas was kind of teetering where it's like, they're okay, but also the West is better than the East. Like, that's the other factor is that if the Dallas Mavericks were in the Eastern Conference, would their record be better? Like, it probably would because then it lowers the amount of Western Conference teams you're playing every night. Like, you're not playing like a team like Denver or the Clippers or OKC, you're not playing them 3-4 times. You're only playing them twice.
Like Minnesota. So, I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
exactly. Yeah, like, so that's the difference. Let's see. So, Underdog is just putting out like some guys on the injury report, so there's nothing really there
Yeah.
from that perspective. Yeah,
I think
so
the next
we're
wave will be around 145, maybe 2. That's what I'm
yeah,
thinking.
so, yeah. I mean, again, like we're again, it's kind of getting to crunch time now, where it's
Mhm.
like, I remember last year, when we were kind of talking about, as we were getting closer and closer, and like we were hearing like, oh, this guy is gonna get moved, and then it was like, nope, they actually did, because that happened last year. Like OG Anunoby was supposed to be, or not supposed to be moved, right? But there was like a lot of stuff about like, hey, like he's going for like 3 firsts, or they want 3 first round picks for him, and Memphis is interested and Golden State's interested in him, and they didn't trade him. But in a way, like if you're the Knicks, like you can't be too mad at the return. I mean, the Knicks won the trade more than Toronto because they got the best player in the deal,
Yeah.
and it got them, to a point of where they want to go right now. Like they're closer to, being a real legitimate threat in the Eastern Conference than they were, before.
Agreed.
Um, but and then like who was the other guy, right? It was Levine last year, right? Like where people thought he might get traded to like New York, and that didn't happen. And I think if you're the Knicks, I think you're probably better off with what you have right now,
Yeah.
um, than if they had gotten Levine, because
Yeah.
that pretty much would have been all they could have done because his contract is so big.
Mhm. I would
Um,
definitely take the 2 knockdown shooters over one Zach Levine who's hurt.
yeah, especially now. But
Yeah.
then the other thing is like a team like a Houston, right? Um,
Mhm.
like they had kind of been in some rumors about stuff, but they've been pretty quiet. For the most part. I mean, because Jalen Green was kind of the name that had been mentioned, like, but it doesn't, there hasn't really been anything about him. So it's like, like, is he gonna get moved at this point? Like, probably not.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to. And when we
Yeah,
talked about it, we kind of just threw it out there because it was in the rumor mill and was
that's
something
what
to talk
everybody was
about.
saying.
Yep. Uh, and that's smart. I think it's smart to probably keep him because I think you can't ignore the upside that the guy has.
Right.
Freak athlete has a lot of superstar potential. It's just a matter of him figuring it out and maturing. I think.
Yeah. Jake Fisher, he said, I've heard several more options for the Bucks' ongoing search for perimeter defense this afternoon. Two
Okay.
more under Milwaukee's consideration per league sources: Chris Dunn and Najee Marshall.
I wouldn't be mad at the Chris Dunn one because that's a
Yeah,
huge backcourt addition, and we already know how scrappy he is. So I
yeah.
wouldn't be too mad at that. It just depends on who they give up.
I mean, I
I would
don't
be
think
monitoring that one.
yeah, his contract I don't think is that big. So like I don't think they'd have to do a whole lot um there. But yeah, Chris Dunn I would like more than Najee Marshall.
Yeah,
It's just again, it's tough because like they don't really have anybody that you feel great about on the wings or on the perimeter. But I feel like ideally you'd like to probably at least try to get the perimeter defense, and then just kind of like be like, hopefully we can contain on the perimeter. And if somebody does get past us on the perimeter, then like, Giannis and Lopez are there in the back line. Like that's
yeah,
kind of because again, I don't think they're going to be able to do both. If they do, that would be amazing.
yeah,
But I think they'll probably only be able to do one.
yeah.
Yeah. So like, so if we look at the Utah Jazz and Chris Dunn, he makes yeah, he's on like a minimum contract
Okay, cool.
basically.
Okay,
So
cool. That's doable.
yeah, it's like 2.5 million. So
Okay.
that's pretty much nothing.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely
Yeah.
be
So if
monitoring that one.
so if he gets moved, you're not giving up a whole lot. Like, and I don't think he has like a quote unquote ton of trade value anyways. Like he's been good for Utah, but is he a guy that you're giving up the moon and the sun for? Like, no.
Right.
I'm trying to think. I guess another team, to kind of that I'm kind of curious about. Is I guess Boston. Does Boston do anything else? Jake Fisher kind of suggested that they're probably not going to do anything, but like maybe there's like one minimum guy or something that they could swap around. I mean,
I
I
heard
guess it
the
wouldn't
Lonnie
really be
Walker thing, but I don't know if that has any smoke to it or any
right.
value to it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, Lonnie Walker. He's kind of been a name that's been thrown around a lot, right? Because again, he was on the Lakers last year, right? He helped them out in the playoffs. Especially in the second round against the Warriors. Um, let's see, what the heck?
What?
Patrick Beverly on his podcast Twitter thing said Patrick Beverly to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the Pat Bev Pod,
Yeah.
the Twitter. Yeah,
All
I
right.
don't know if that's. I don't like. Is that legit? I mean, like that's his podcast.
Yeah, I don't think he got moved to the Bucks. That would have been announced by like Woj or something like that.
Well, he might have been the first guy to announce it. You never know.
Heck no. I'm gonna use the
Oh, yeah,
bathroom real
Patrick.
quick.
Yeah, Underdog Sports is saying Patrick Beverly said he's being traded to the Bucks, so he might actually be getting traded to the Bucks.
You think
He might
so?
have broken it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why he would say it on his podcast, like if he wasn't.
Yeah.
Like it was his
It's kind of
podcast
weird.
Twitter feed, so like I don't know why he would say that if he wasn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, well, yeah, but probably by the time you come back, they might have something.
Yeah, I hope. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So, like if Patrick Beverly actually is getting traded to Milwaukee, I mean, I guess it's interesting, right? I mean, because again, when you talk about, the Bucks, they don't really have a whole lot they can do, unless it's like Pat Connaughton, or somebody like that. There's not a whole lot they can do. But, if you get Patrick Beverly, I guess that's better than, that's better than nothing, right? I mean, like again, he's at a different point in his career than he was, a few years ago. Um, but either way, it's better than nothing. You know what I mean? He did, yeah. That's what I thought. Like that's why I kind of assumed it was real because I saw on his yeah, and Woes just said it. So yeah, so that was legit. Yeah, so he's getting traded to the Bucks, and it's for Cameron Payne. So I I mean, I would probably say that's an upgrade over Cameron Payne. Obviously offensively he's a different guy, but I think he's a better defender. Now he is small, but he does play bigger than his height, and he's a veteran, right? I think ideally, if you're the Bucks, you'd probably like to get somebody a little more athletic. Um, but it's definitely surprising, right? Because like I didn't really expect the Sixers to trade Patrick Beverly. And Milwaukee definitely wouldn't have been what I would have thought either. Like, I mean, I didn't really expect that. So, um, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, from Philly's perspective. Because I mean, if I'm Philly, I would rather have Patrick Beverly. But I mean, I guess the thought process is, um, upgrade and better for defense. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think for the Bucks, that's an upgrade. But I guess my thing is that I'm assuming that could be the scenario where because they've been talking about Kyle Lowry, if he gets bought out by Charlotte, he could go to Philly, right? So then I guess if you're Philly, would you rather have Kyle Lowry than Patrick Beverly, right? Because Lowry's a more traditional point guard. I don't think he's the same guy defensively anymore, but he is a veteran that's been on a championship team that's been in big playoff games. So, I don't know. But he's also an older guy too. It's not like neither of these guys are spring chickens. So, um but yeah, for the Bucks it's definitely an upgrade for sure. And all the Bucks gave up was a 2027 second round pick. So that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense for Milwaukee. Like I said, my guess for Philly is they're going to try to get Lowry. And either way, like I like what Philly did. Um, anyway so far. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, he literally broke his own trade news. I've not seen that before. I think if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I think he also broke when he signed with Philly that he was going to Philly. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure like when he first signed with Philly in the offseason, he said it and like broke the news on his podcast that he was signing with Philly. Like and that was during free agency. So, yeah, but that is pretty funny though. Like cuz again, how often does that happen, right? Especially because again, like, there are other NBA players that have podcasts and they don't normally, like break that type of news on their podcast, right? Like usually they just, usually Woj or Shams, does that first. So that's pretty creative. But yeah. Um and then Jake Fisher also mentions Sixers are still in conversations with like why is Bleacher Report putting a beacon notification for Patrick Beverly? But anyways, Jake Fisher mentions that the Sixers are still in conversations with Chicago on Andre Drummond. Um, So I think that would be nice if Philadelphia was able to get Drummond, um, and to kind of not like replace Embiid, but like to have him there while Embiid is out. He's obviously not Joel Embiid, but he can put up numbers, and get some rebounds for you. So like if you do that, like that's solid. Yeah, if the Sixers grab him, that's a steal. Because again, he's also on a minimum contract, right? He's not a guy that's making like 10-20 million dollars a year. He's not making anything. So he's a guy where like if a team can get him for the minimum, that's a steal. Um, let's see. According to Chris Haynes, the Brooklyn Nets are waiving Harry Giles the third. Yeah, that was a guy that I think had some injury issues early in his career. Kind of worked his way back, but he's been waived again. So I don't know. I'm not. I'm gonna assume he's probably not gonna be with another team. But yeah, the Beverly thing is pretty funny. Yeah. Who is Harry Giles? I think he went to Duke. He was a big man that went to Duke a while back, but he had some knee issues, multiple knee injuries. So he ended up not being as good as I think some people were hoping he would be. Like Brooklyn waived him, right? He was on the Nets. He wasn't really doing a whole lot. It's more so like a really good story because he had some bad knee injuries and was able to come back. Um, but I don't think he's going anywhere. It's just that's the most recent notification that was put out. But yeah, for the Bucks, yeah, like they needed to upgrade that defense. I mean, like again, it's been better since Doc Rivers has come in. And I think some of that is because guys are playing harder because according to a lot of reports, they were not doing a lot of that effort wise for the previous coach Adrian Griffin. But you still need some better defensive personnel. And like you need a guard, I think, where like if you're closing games, you need a guard out there with Damian Lillard that can help, you know, guard the other team's opposing guard. Like I think it's kind of difficult to try to close with Lillard and Malik Beasley, even though Beasley shot the ball pretty well. Um, I think he's if I don't know if he still is, but at one point he was the best like 3-point shooter percentage wise in the NBA. But if you can get another guy, then that's good. And actually, yeah, you're back, and it was legit.
The Pat Bev thing?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was legit, which is
I
what I
saw it on
thought.
Twitter. I was like,
Yeah, it was Yeah, it was Patrick Beverly for Cameron Payne, and like I think Milwaukee gave them a second, like a late second, a future second. So
that's pretty good.
yeah, we talked about it. While you were gone.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
cool.
like
Thanks for
yeah.
breaking it
So
down. I need to use the
yeah,
phone.
so I said my thought process is that probably means Philly thinks they can get Kyle Lowry.
Oh, for like a buyout?
Yeah, that's my
Okay.
guess.
Yeah, I
And
think
it
that
was
makes
fun.
sense.
And it was funny because Bleacher Report had a beacon notification for Patrick Beverly. Again, I don't
Really?
know why. Yeah, they had a
Yeah.
beacon.
Yeah. It's been that kind of day though. I think, Pat
I
Bev
guess
is a bigger name
they
somewhat,
even had
maybe
a
for the
beacon.
wrong reasons, but
They had a beacon for PJ too.
yeah. I mean, I guess they're just trying to draw people in because it's been such, like Xander Cade said, a dry deadline. So
Yeah, that's true. But 144 or 145 now, so quarter to two. So you basically have an hour 15 minutes left until the deadline closes.
yes, sir.
So I mean, again, I think the Knicks and the Mavs have done a very good job, of like the good teams, right? I think
Mhm.
Charlotte has done a really good job in terms of like they're not a good team, but they did a really good job of moving guys and getting guys back. Hadn't even mentioned, right? Like Terry Rozier, like a couple weeks ago, right? They were able to get a future first for him. Right? They didn't get it back any players. It was Lowry, but you still got back a future first. So you got what, like 2 first-round picks in the future for one for Rozier, one for PJ. And then you got some seconds, I think. And then you got what was it like Trey Man, whatever else. All right. Oh, we got Killian Hayes getting released. Okay.
Oh, I should not have put my hand up before you finish that sentence.
Wow. Okay. So that obviously means that nobody really wanted to trade for him.
Makes
So
sense.
getting released is probably the worst one though, because I mean that means right now he's essentially out of a job.
Ooh, that
Like,
hurts.
yeah, that's rough. Because that also means that like wherever if like let's say if he were to like sign somewhere else, then it's like he's not on a rookie deal anymore, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty wild.
Ooh.
What?
That I'm just still reacting to that. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah, exactly. Killian Hayes, yikes. Yeah, he got waived. He got waived.
Oh man. I thought he was gonna get traded for like a second round, but jeez.
Yeah,
Released is crazy. And he's what? Former
yeah.
like top 7 pick
Top
or
10
something?
pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, top 10 pick.
Let me see.
That's wild.
He was drafted
Yeah,
number
number
7.
7. Yeah, number 7.
No,
Yeah, that's
that's
pretty rough.
bad, bro.
That's pretty rough that like you drafted a guy number 7
And you
and
released him.
yeah, and you
Got
released
nothing back for him.
Yeah, and Chris Haynes said basically what I thought, that the Lakers are probably going to stand pat, which is what I said. I said they
Okay.
were probably going to stand pat and just use those picks in the offseason and then not get anybody, which is what I thought. Because I just don't see them being able to actually get, like a star with that return. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I could be wrong. Then you also have to factor in, say, like a D'Angelo Russell. He's on a player option. What if he just opts out and leaves? Like, I'm not
True.
saying that he will leave, but like, because it sounds like he wants to stay in LA, but at the same time, he could just leave.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. So that kind of tells me that like Lakers, Warriors, teams like that, they're probably not going to be moving a whole lot. Okay.
yeah. And again, like, it's kind of like what we said, like, if it's, to me, like, from the Lakers' perspective, if it's not DeJounte Murray, it's not really a whole lot else I don't really know that you can do. You know what I mean? Because, like, again, like, if you can get Dorian Finney-Smith, okay, fine. But, like, other than that, like, there's no one else that you would give up a first for, right? Like, are you giving up a first for Tyus Jones? Because, like I said, I'm not. I'm just
Not
not
at this
doing it.
point.
No. And then, say, like, from Golden State's perspective, like, who are you trading? Because it's like what we said with Wiggins. Like, is there a guy that's an upgrade? Probably not. Like, and then maybe from like the Warriors' perspective, you're like, well, Kaminga's playing well. If we can get like Wiggins and Clay to be better than what they were before, like just not be bad, like then maybe we can just win more games that way.
Yeah. GG's, bro.
But like I said, but again, I already said that I didn't really expect them to do anything because that's what everybody that has covered the team had been saying. Like, and I think they were kind of like trying to prep everybody, all the fans for like, yeah, they're probably not going to do anything. And that doesn't mean that they weren't trying. Like, I don't necessarily just think that they were just like sitting in a room and just like eating donuts all day, but they probably just didn't like any of the offers, which again, I wouldn't be happy with because I feel like you could at least do one thing. But like I said, if they do anything, probably just, move a guy to get slightly under the luxury tax.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, but again, say for Golden State, doesn't sound like nobody has come out and said that they're not going to do anything. Because, like, that's Chris Haynes that's saying that, right? So, like, we haven't heard anything about Golden State. But again, like, are they going to do a whole lot? Like, probably not.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, but definitely the biggest loser of the trade deadline is Killian Hayes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He doesn't have a job, dude. This is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really bad. Like, people are cooking him. Talk about end of an era, great career in DoorDash waiting for him, from trade rumors to free agent. Like, GG's, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, at least now Jaden Ivey gets, a huge opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess, like, just kind of like throwing something out there.
What's up?
Like, do you think that, like, with them standing pat, do you think that, like, increases the odds that, like, maybe LeBron, because I think he has a player option, do you think that increases the odds that he leaves?
Yeah.
Not that he is going to leave, but, like, because I'm assuming that he probably wouldn't be all that excited about them probably not doing anything.
Yeah.
So, like, do you think that would increase the odds that he leaves, or is it more so like, you probably expect him to stay? He probably just wouldn't be happy about it.
I don't think LeBron's gonna be a Laker at the end of the season.
You mean like? Oh, you mean like in the offseason you think he'll leave?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, just considering like where they are in the standings, how the season is gone. I mean, like, they're not horrible. They're 27 and 25, which is better than what they were, a couple weeks ago. So I
Yeah.
just I don't know. I think LeBron. I think it's an end of an era, especially potentially if Bronny declares for the draft. I doubt he's gonna go very high, but we'll see. And there's just been a lot of rumors and rumblings. But if you guys could turn around the season, I think he'll probably stay. But as of right now, he probably isn't too high on the locker room, the vibes, whatever the case may be, and the fact that you
Yeah.
guys haven't done anything in the deadline, and we're pretty much almost done. We're closing in on the final hour, so something's got to be done, and I think he'll feel better about the situation. What do you think? Are you on the same line, or are you just kind of eh?
I mean, I think he wants to stay in LA, so like I don't necessarily think he's gonna leave, but I think again, like obviously I'm sure it would be frustrating for him that like they didn't do anything, right?
Yeah.
Like not even something small. I think in fairness, like I think the locker room has been better as of late. Otherwise, they
Mhm.
wouldn't have have won some of the games that they've won as of late. But I think also like at the same time, like you know, like I don't know. Like, I guess the issue is that I'd have a hard time thinking that like he would, decline his player option and then just like go anywhere for like a minimum, just because his son was drafted somewhere. And
Right.
I think it was Austin Rivers, right, who kind of mentioned something. I think it was on one of the NBA shows where he kind of threw out the idea of like, maybe it might be bad for like his son, like if he decides to play with him like immediately, just because like there already may be a target, on his back, and then like there may be even more of a bigger target, and then like for him maybe he wants to like kind of already carve out whatever the early part of his career is. So
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure. I could definitely understand that because there's a lot of pressure that comes with being LeBron James's son, I'm sure, and some of the pressure is put on you by the media, some of it's by LeBron, obviously. So, I'm sure they'll figure it out. But I don't think LeBron's happy as a Laker, clearly. But like you said, as of late, it has been better and it has looked better. So
Yeah. So, but yeah, So I don't know. The Killian Hayes one being released is probably the most unexpected move other than Gordon Hayward.
yeah,
The
I thought he
Patrick
was gonna
Beverly
get
one was
traded.
pretty surprising to me as well, because like it's just like I don't know.
I
That one,
thought
that one, definitely-
I thought
that
Killian
one.
Hayes was
Definitely.
gonna be traded for sure, but released is wild.
I didn't
That's
really
rock
know if he
bottom.
was. I didn't really know if he was going to get traded because I just didn't really think he had like a lot of value. But again, like we had heard that like, oh, maybe Memphis might do something, but
That's what I'm
like,
saying.
why would Memphis give up a ton to get Killian Hayes?
I didn't
But then
think
it's like,
they should give up a ton to get him. Like I just thought he
yeah,
was gonna be moved somewhere.
I would think that would be. I would think if I'm Detroit, it would be better to get like a second or something back than just release him.
That's my point.
Especially like if I'm Memphis. I mean, like I guess if you're Memphis, you could just sign him now
Yeah.
and not give up anything. Which I guess like maybe that was kind of the thought process for Detroit. Because
Right.
like if they're cutting him, that would probably suggest they're not going to play him anymore. Although it's funny because he started last night.
Yep.
Um,
But
so
then Jaden
I don't
Ivey
know.
had like a career night.
Yeah, and yeah, because I was without Cade.
Yep.
So now it is 1:55. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you got a little over an hour.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we're already kind of like getting stuff about like some teams like aren't going to do much, there may not be a whole lot left at this point.
Right.
But yeah, like I don't know. I just don't buy that they're going to be able to use that stuff to acquire star play. I just don't buy it. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm not
I
saying
agree
that
with
like
you.
I'm not saying that they're lying. I just don't buy that like this we couldn't get anything for what we have right now, but we will be able to get that stuff, use that stuff to get somebody better in the offseason. Like if I'm the Cavs, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
am I gonna be like am I gonna be that excited about like, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and 3 firsts for Donovan Mitchell? And then
No.
I guess you'd have to add a third salary because Donovan Mitchell makes a ton of money.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
Um,
hyped about that.
right? Like what
That
like what
takes you
is
back.
Donovan?
That steps you back.
Yeah, I mean, like, and again, like I said, unless it's a scenario where he specifically asked for a trade to a specific team, you know, like, okay, so he makes 33 million this season, and then next season he'll make 35, right? So it would have to be like, Rui, and then probably Reeves, unless it's like something else like that. Just I don't know that I just don't, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like I just don't see it. If I'm Cleveland, I would not do that. Like I feel like there would have to be somebody that could offer something better. Yeah, like they're not doing anything. But I
Like
already said that.
Xander just said, yeah, they're
Yeah,
done.
like but I said that what, like 2 hours ago?
Mm-hmm.
Or however long ago it was. It was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And because again, all the people covering the team have kind of been prepping everybody for the idea that they're probably not going to do anything. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not saying that they're like, because it's not their fault. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not the people covering the team's fault, but like, I think it's more so like kind of softening the blow because I think most fans would be pretty unhappy with them not doing literally anything.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, but like, this is the second trade deadline where they didn't do anything because 2 seasons ago they didn't do anything. That was the first year with Westbrook. I think the only stuff they did was they waived Ariza and waived DeAndre Jordan. That was after the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't make any trades. Um, so is there another team that you're thinking of, like in terms of like, um, like that may make a move, like at this point?
Um, I kind of was hoping the Kings would make a move, but it doesn't seem like they're gonna do anything.
Here we go. We got something from Shams.
What's up?
Memphis is expected to acquire Yuta Watanabe from the Suns as part of the 3-team trade. So we're getting the salaries. Suns are sending out Kata Bates, Jop, Jordan Goodwin, Chemezi Metu. So they sent out so they didn't. So it doesn't sound like Nasir Little's in it at all.
Oh
So
wow.
it was like a bunch of minimum contract guys.
Okay.
Uh, so that's interesting. Unless Nasir Little's just in it and they haven't said anything, but.
So they got rid of basically people's salary that would be equivalent to almost 9, I think.
Right.
If they're all making 2 plus.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're all making 2+, and it's like 4 guys, right? So
Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel pretty good about that then.
yeah, exactly. Because again, like you got an upgrade at a position of need, and you gave up nothing. Like I
Yeah.
mean, those guys weren't really doing much of anything. So
Yeah. I'm also looking in the East. I'm probably looking at Atlanta, but who knows what they do.
I don't think they do anything at this point
Yeah.
because there was kind of the sense that like Chris Haynes was saying maybe they do a deal with New Orleans to send Murray there, but like it doesn't. It sounds like that just fell through. And I don't know whose side, decided not to do anything. So
Yeah. Orlando's been very quiet. They haven't done anything either.
yeah, I'm kind of curious what they do because, like, say with a Markel Fultz, he's on an expiring.
Mm-hmm.
So if he doesn't get traded, does that mean he stays and they re-sign him? But then it's like they have a lot of guards.
Yeah.
So and like none of the guards are like an ideal starting guard. I don't think.
Right.
In my opinion.
I agree wholeheartedly.
But at the same time, like if you're Orlando, like then it would also but then it's like you're a young team. So it's like you're not in the same spot as a team like, the Knicks is a little bit different, right? Because like they're a team that's got guys with a little bit more experience that are trying to get to the next level as opposed to Orlando just got here.
Right.
So it's pretty quiet now. I mean, we have an hour left, and I mean, but that's kind of wild though that like an hour before that, like more than an hour before the deadline, we get something that says a team is not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Like how often does that happen? Like usually that's not at least until like maybe a half hour.
Yeah.
But
It's intriguing though.
So let's see. Yeah, so again, right now it's pretty quiet.
I can't get over the fact that Pat Bev broke his own news.
Yeah, we were talking about that in the chat where he was like, he's like Pat Bev is funny for that. He broke his own trade. Like, yeah, that was pretty funny.
Yeah. I didn't believe him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just because it was on like it was his verified podcast account. I assumed it was legit.
Right.
It would be one thing if it was like, if it was like I don't know some fake account, like if it was like one of those weirdo fake accounts that have like a similar name to the real ones, but
Yeah.
but that one was his actual podcast account. Like if it was like Pat Burr a podcast or something, where it's like one letter off.
Yeah. So do you think Gordon Hayward's going to start?
Um, I don't think so because I mean, like the starting five to me. I mean, what is it? It's SGA, Josh Giddey, Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren, right? So
Yeah.
probably not.
You don't think Hayward would play over Giddy?
Nah, the only reason why I don't think so is because I think Giddey's like because like I don't know. Like the only reason why I don't think so is because I just feel like Hayward as a veteran is probably like just more so just like happy to like be on like a good team.
Sure.
Like, and I think it would probably just make more sense to have him like be like one of the sixth men and help out the second unit.
Yeah.
But they could start him. Like it's because again he makes a max deal.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like you think he's gonna start?
I'm not sure. I just saw like Bleacher Report put out, the potential starting lineup, and they had kept Dort in and then subbed Giddy in or Gordon Hayward in for Giddy. So
Yeah, I
that's
guess.
why I was asking.
Yeah,
But I could see it go both ways.
yeah, because
I feel like it could be dependent on the night.
right. Because in fairness, like it is kind of an unconventional starting five
Yeah.
that they already have anyways. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's like Lou Dort is starting like at the forward spot basically, but
Yeah.
he's size wise he's more like a guard.
Yeah.
So it's like in theory you could just start Lou Dort at the two and then start Hayward and Jalen Williams, and then like Jalen Williams is more of like a wing, but he's at the four basically.
Yeah.
So like they could kind of just do whatever because they have a lot of different types of players. But my guess is that he doesn't start.
Yeah. Exactly.
'Cause I feel like if he starts and plays a lot of minutes, that's where you get a little closer to he probably might get hurt.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Who the heck is putting hearts in the chat? Somebody's just
Um,
spamming hearts.
it's not me.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's probably
four
Xander.
yeah, there's four people watching, or well, I'm in the chat, so
Yeah.
it's like three other than me. So
Appreciate everybody for coming through, man. It's been a
yeah,
intriguing deadline. I'm glad you guys showed up.
yeah. I hope that like we don't go like an entire hour and like nothing.
Yeah, that would suck.
That would
Huh?
that would stink. I mean, like we did get a lot, like in fairness, like in different waves, but like it's been very quiet as of late. Other than like what was it, Killian Hayes getting released, some other
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay, so it's Zeke who's spamming hearts. Got it. How have you
Okay.
been, buddy? You been enjoying the deadline? Your team, the Kings, they didn't make any moves, buddy.
Is that his team?
Yeah, he's a Kings fan. Yeah, I think Hayward is better as a six-man type of role. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But
Yeah,
Bleacher
like,
Report put out that graphic of him in the starting five. I was like, huh.
Yeah.
Be
But
interesting.
I remember but they always do weird stuff because I remember it was like ESPN that was like I think the year that Philly signed Dwight Howard, they
Mhm.
had him in the starting lineup with Joel Embiid. And it was like, no, that was not going to happen. Dwight Howard is not starting at power forward next to Joel Embiid.
It has been a boring deadline, but regardless,
Yeah.
it is what it is. We kind of expected that. Zeke is a Kings fan. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
explain to us why you're a Kings fan, please.
Yeah, and according to Shams, because he's got like a live, thing going on, and he's
Yeah.
saying like, with the Murray Pelicans thing, he's saying like it's stalled because the Hawks want Herb Jones.
Really?
And so and I guess the Pelicans don't want to do that, which I understand. It's like, good 3-and-D wing.
We're trying to get Kuzma. Okay, give me a first round pick for Kuzma.
Yeah, I don't feel like that's happening at this point.
I know. That's what Zeke said. He said Kings are trying to get Kuzma. So give us a first round pick. You got a deal, bro.
Yeah. I am a Kings fan because of the beam.
Oh,
yeah, I mean
Lord.
the beam is very enticing, I think.
Yeah, the beam is crazy, bro. You got to come up with a better reasoning than that.
Yeah, Kings suck. All right. Oh man, we got some Kings beef in the chat and Jeremy Grant.
Bro, you're not getting Jeremy Grant, bro.
Well, you can't get both. You can only get one or the other. I mean, because contracts wise, like, look at what you're saying. All right.
Oh my god. No way there's beef in here.
Yeah, I mean, we had a little bit of it in our one of our older live streams from last season in the playoffs, right? Because I think it was Moverse and Xander,
Oh
right? Weren't they
yeah,
like
yeah,
beefing
yeah,
over like the
yeah,
Celtics or
yeah,
something? Celtics or
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. I don't know. I thought I could be wrong, but
That's funny, bro.
yeah, I mean, Clippers own you.
Oh my god.
I mean, he's not
Clippers,
wrong. Like,
Clippers
yeah,
versus
yeah,
Kings, bro. I'm sorry, I'm taking the Clippers, bro. Ten
yeah. I'm
times out of
taking the
10.
Clippers. Yeah, like, and
Kings are frauds, bro.
yeah, I mean, I don't think it will be as close as the Warriors Kings series last year where that
Heck
went
no.
7. I think the Clippers will probably win that, you know, in the shorter series. I think 'cause yeah,
Yeah,
they don't
jeez,
have
bro.
it's just you don't have a matchup for you don't have a Kawhi matchup. Not that anybody necessarily would, but like there are like players like where it's like you know there's not a whole lot of players big and strong enough to match up with it, but like you already don't have that.
And then this guy
So
spams dots. Yeah, bro. I mean, hey, bro. I'm sorry, bro, but the Kings are a first round exit, bro.
I mean,
But at least you're in the
some teams,
playoffs.
yeah, some teams they will match up better with than some others.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the issue for the Kings right now is, they had the bad loss to the Pistons. And they have a really difficult schedule, coming up, right? Where I think they play the Nuggets like 3 times this month,
Yeah.
right? Like they play Denver 3 times this month. They play the Thunder. They play Phoenix. Although I think they've beaten the Thunder a few times, so that may not be too problematic. But like they play the Nuggets, they play the Clippers. They play a lot of they play the Bucks. They play a lot of really good teams over the next month or so. So
Yeah.
like, unless they, drastically overperform, which is possible because, they are more than capable of winning a lot of regular season games. Like if they lose a lot of games, they're going to drop because they dropped to 7th
Yeah.
by losing to
Already.
Detroit. And they would have been I guess probably tied for like 5 or 6 or whatever, right, if they had won. Actually, no, they would have been 5 straight up because they would have had the fewest losses. Who would the Kings beat in the series? Well, that's the problem. Like, I
I
mean,
don't think you could really. Maybe the play-in teams, but the
yeah,
teams
like when
above
I
them.
say that, yeah, like when I say that they match up better against some teams than others, that doesn't mean I think they would win. It's
Right.
like it's just the difference between like there are some teams where if they play them, they may not win more than one game,
Right.
and then there are others where they could probably get like 2 or 3. Always receiving hate as a Kings fan and Texans, so I'm used to it.
Ew.
Like Texans, the football team.
Yeah.
Okay, Detroit has waived Daniel House Jr.
Okay. Didn't they
Okay,
just
so
trade for him?
yeah, but again, the thing with Detroit is because they made so many moves, they're gonna have to cut some guys.
Yeah.
So they brought in a lot of players. Yeah, so
Oh
the
my
end of an era,
gosh.
I guess.
Yeah.
For
End of an era.
Detroit, right? Like no more Daniel House,
No
no
more
more Joe
Killian.
Harris, no more Killian Hayes.
Hey,
That's
bro.
yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
but you
we're
can't be
moving
too
on.
angry about it, though.
Yeah, Zeke got so many alias. All right, weird combo. Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I guess because like for some people, like if you don't have a local team, then you kind of
bro,
like
he has
most people.
plenty of local teams.
Well, no, I know he does, but I'm just saying like I know like for a lot of fans, like usually like growing up, it's like whatever your like whatever your parents' favorite team is, or like your
Yeah.
older sibling or whatever's favorite team is. That's usually like the team you gravitate towards, unless you have like a local team. So it's
Yeah.
like if your family grew up being like a Kings fan, right? Then like it makes it more likely you're going
Bro,
to be a Kings
his
fan.
dad is not a Kings fan. He's just a Kings fan for the beam, apparently.
Wait, so what's been official in the trade? Which one? There's a lot of them.
There's been at least like 15 trades, bro.
There's
You
been a
gotta
lot of
specify, bro.
yeah, like yeah. I don't know which one you're talking about.
There's literally been so many. I mean, we could go through the ones that have happened so far, if that makes you feel any better. Even though we kind of already did that, but
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot. So, I mean, I'm not gonna go through every single one, but like,
just go through the big
Buddy
ones.
Hield, he went to Philly.
Yep.
Give me update. I just woke up.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with the one earlier this morning, right? So Buddy Hield, he went to Philadelphia
Yep.
from Indiana. And Indiana basically got back, expiring contracts. Um Toronto got Kelly Olynyk Killian Hayes being in the league was a crime. I don't know how he stayed so long. Because he was on a rookie deal.
Yeah. He just
Usually they
didn't pan
give
out.
usually they give young guys, like 3 seasons, to kind of pan out unless they're really, really bad. Because there have
Yeah.
been some other guys like that lasted like 2 years,
Yep.
right? Like Anthony Bennett probably was like what 2, 3 years.
I think he was two
Then
and
they
a
just
half.
got cut. Yeah, something like that. Hasheem Thabeet, that's a throwback name.
Yeah.
That guy I don't think he lasted very long. But anyways, and then Toronto, right? They got Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji from Utah. Utah got, again, Otto Porter Jr., a first round pick, Kyra Lewis Jr. Gordon Hayward went to Oklahoma City. And Charlotte got back some young guys. Dallas got Daniel Gafford from Washington, and Washington got back Rashawn Holmes and a draft pick. The Knicks got Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. And the Pistons, got Quentin Grimes and then, Evan Fournier, Malachi Flynn, 2 seconds. The Nets did this weirdo trade where it was like Dennis Schroeder and Thaddeus Young for Spencer Dinwiddie. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it happened. It exists. Then Dallas also got PJ Washington and they moved Grant Williams and Seth Curry in the first to Charlotte. Suns got Royce O'Neal and basically gave up a bunch of their minimum contracts in seconds. I think they also got David Roddy, we talked about. Patrick Beverly broke his own trade and was traded from Philly to Milwaukee. And then I think that's the most recent one.
Yeah.
So, and then Killian Hayes got with him. So,
Yeah. It's been like quiet in terms of like the quality of players. It's been a lot of role players, positional players, rotational guys, but no stars really. I mean, I guess if you want to count Gordon Hayward, some people would consider him a star based on his salary, but it's been a quiet deadline. Like Fred said, it's been boring. I think Xander said it a couple times. Deadline blows. Yeah, in terms of the quality of players, for sure.
Yeah, is this the worst trade deadline ever?
Well,
not ever, because I mean, like we'd have to go back. Yeah, it's definitely probably one of the weakest ones in recent memory. I mean, there have been, like you said, some impactful players get moved. But then I guess you also got to factor in, like, I mean, again, like, in terms of the qualities of players, like, how many guys are you willing to give up, significant assets for? But at the same time, like, like it is what it is, because a lot of the guys that we were, that got moved that were really good have already been moved.
Yeah.
So, that's what I was saying, before, where it was like, you're not getting, a Kristaps Porzingis, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Drew like those caliber of guys have already been moved.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, a lot of the big name guys got moved prior to the deadline. So
right. So, and that may change, teams' approaches, from now to, from next season onwards. Is that you may not be able to do a whole lot at the trade deadline for some of these teams, right? Like, let's say, a team like I don't know, like a Golden State, right? Like, you may just have to do your stuff in the offseason, which they did, right? Like, they traded for Chris Paul, but like just in general, right? Because like, now you're in a position where like you're kind of stuck because you can't really do much. And you probably needed to do more in order to, move up a tier. So
yeah. Who's gonna pick up Killian Hayes? Probably nobody, dude.
yeah, I mean, Memphis wanted to trade for him. So I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they like, I don't know, sign him to like, waive somebody and then picked him up. And I guess in theory, if you're Memphis, you'd rather do that than like trade for him and actually give up stuff.
Right.
Right. Because he's probably not going to play at a level where like somebody else is going to steal him in free agency. Like even if he's like, okay, he's probably not going to play like amazing. So I guess maybe Memphis, because, there's been so much smoke about it. But like you said, it could also just be that nobody picks him up.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a contender.
Heck
right.
no.
Because obviously he couldn't really impact a bad team.
Right.
So it's like if he's not playing that great for a bad team, and it's not like he's not trying, he's just not that great. He's not going to go to a contender. So he's either going to get picked up by, another bad team and maybe like a team gets a second, look, another flyer at him. Like he could be one of those second draft guys, where he doesn't pan out for his initial team but does better with another team, or he doesn't get signed at all.
Yeah, it could go either way.
So
Still quiet. Still haven't
yeah,
heard anything since what the. Oh, okay, so they said multiple contenders expected to pursue House in free agency. Like that's the last
right.
thing that we've heard, and that's not really even deadline related, really.
Yeah, and David Aldridge, he clarified the pick that Washington's going to get for Gafford. The Wizards will receive the higher of either Oklahoma City or the Clippers' 2024 first round picks.
Okay.
So whoever has the worst record, you're going to get their pick. But
I
at the
feel good
same
about
time, it's probably going to be like late, bottom 20s, which is fine.
Yeah.
Like it's better than nothing.
Exactly.
So
because I
you
think
get
that would mean that we get 2 first rounders because we'll have our own pick and then
right.
whichever one.
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
that. Can't hate on it.
Yeah, you'll have your own pick, which would presumably be top 5, unless you get some bad lottery luck. And then you'll also, like you said, get like a pick in the bottom 20s, right? Like 25 onward, because the Clippers and the Thunder, they're amongst the top 4 seeds in the West, and they have basically a top 5-6 record in the NBA. So
yeah, I'll take it, bro.
Yeah. And that's kind of always nice, like when stuff like that is clarified, because there's a lot of stuff that when it gets put out, like isn't initially addressed. So some of that stuff can be kind of confusing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's dead silent now. Like, I
Dude,
mean,
people are really high on the Knicks moves. Like even Magic Johnson, he thinks they have a real shot of not just in the Eastern Conference Finals, but the NBA Finals.
yeah.
Do you agree with that? Do you think the Knicks could potentially get to the finals? I think if they play their cards right, it wouldn't surprise me if they do.
I think they do have a chance. I mean, because again, you got to. I mean, obviously the Celtics and Bucks are really good, but again, nothing is guaranteed, right? Because I mean, you remember last year, right? We picked the Bucks to win the championship, and they didn't even get out of the first round, right? And that was obviously due to injury. But that's why, again, if you're the Knicks, that's why you do moves like that to prepare yourself. Because again, what if something like? Because again, we already have a situation in Philly where Joel Embiid's hurt, right? So he's going to be out for a while. So obviously that lowers Philly's odds a little bit until he comes back. And if you're the Knicks, you could be the next team up, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you do whatever you can, if within reason, right? Because now if you're the Knicks, you are in a spot where if something good happens, yeah, you could make it. I'm not saying they will. Like they wouldn't probably be my pick to come out of the East, but they have a chance, right? Especially again, they have enough. They have a lot of really good pieces on that roster. You have a guy in Jalen Brunson who's clearly proven, that he can, make a huge impact in the playoffs because he did it for Dallas and he did it for the Knicks last year, right? So that's already a bonus, So if you have that type of guy, you have a chance to win, a playoff series. So they could do it. I just don't know if they would be like, are they the favorites to come out of the East because of this? Like, no. But
I think they're a dark horse, though.
They've continuously added on, so they've continuously gotten to a point where they have a much better chance. Like again, if you told me going into this season with the roster they had, would they get to the finals? I would say absolutely not.
Right.
But now they have a real shot.
Yeah, they made some really good moves.
Yeah, like and again, that's the cool part. And that's the bonus part of like, having say like guys like a Fournier on the roster where you can just move him, and he wasn't playing. What percentage chance do you guys think DeJounte Murray gets traded this last 40 minutes?
5%.
I mean, based off of what Shams is saying, 5%, if that. Because, like, he's basically kind of been saying that, like, the Pelicans, it almost sounds like he's kind of framing it as the Pelicans would have a really good shot. But the issue is that Atlanta wants Herb Jones, right? And this is kind of like the same issue that they had with LA, where Atlanta wants Austin Reeves and the Lakers don't want to do that. And so
it's too much.
So like if you're the Lakers and you're not giving up Austin Reeves and that's what Atlanta wants, then it's not going to get done. So same with New Orleans. If Atlanta wants Herb Jones and New Orleans doesn't want to do that, well then you're just not going to have a deal.
Yeah. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're at a stalemate.
Right. Yeah. Now if you're Atlanta, right? Again, is it better to decline the deal and then wait until the offseason to see if you can get something better? Or do you just take it now you know, and gamble that like we may not get anything better. Because like personally, I don't think there's going to be anything better. I could be completely wrong, but starting next season, his contract goes way up from what it is right now. And I think even though he's good, I think his value isn't quite as high if he's making like, closer to a max as opposed to like 17, 18 million. Right? Like if you're it's kind of like what we said with some of the other guys, like say a Zach Levine, when he was making like 20 something million a year, right? Like you're cool with that, right?
Yeah,
Same with Beal. But once those guys are making like 40, 50 million a season, that
it's too
becomes a
much, bro.
lot tougher,
So
right?
Fred,
And Phoenix
no,
so
no, continue.
yeah, so like Phoenix was in a situation where it's not like they gave up five rotational guys. It was Chris Paul and Landry Shamet and whatever else it was. But that doesn't always happen, right? So like, and even still, it's still a gamble because again, that's a lot of money for one guy who isn't like a top 15 player. So
Yeah,
now Murray's not making that much.
no,
I
no,
think
no.
even by the end of his contract, it's like $30 million player option by the end of his extension or whatever.
Yeah,
But still, if I'm a team that wants DeJounte Murray, I would rather trade for him now while he's still under a smaller deal and not give up as much than next season when he makes a lot more.
yeah,
So I would say it's a pretty low chance. Like if
yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. Like and I kind of it felt like that, you know, last night. Because again, like we had started hearing stuff in the last few days that like stuff was quiet. And like there were guys that were moved, but then there were other guys like say Dorian Finney Smith, he hasn't gotten moved, right? Like Brooklyn made a deal, they made a move, but it didn't involve Dorian Finney Smith at all. It involved Dennis Schroeder, Spencer Dinwiddie, and they got back Dennis Schroeder. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay.
So, Fred, did
So
you
now,
have anywhere like that you thought DeJounte Murray was going or you wanted him to go? Because at this point, you kind of got to wash your hands of it.
yeah, I mean, yeah, because and that's the issue, that's it's not that he's a bad player. It's that I don't think, like if you're New Orleans, right, and you're getting DeJounte Murray, right, who's in that deal, right? It would have to be, I would guess, um, is it McCollum? Like, or is it some other guy, because again, it's not like DeJounte Murray makes a lot. It sounded like New Orleans wanted a Kungwu and Murray,
Yeah,
right? Because I
that's
think
too much, bro.
right. So like if you're New Orleans and you want a Kungwu and DeJounte Murray, okay, well Atlanta's gonna ask for Herb Jones and then probably, whatever else. Because
Yeah,
I mean like a Kungwu doesn't even make a lot. So
right.
I'd be curious what that framework would even be. But, again, that's the difficulty with the deals is both sides have to agree, to a deal. Or if it's, a three-team deal, then three guys have to, agree to something. So
And if there's 30 minutes left, I just don't foresee them, coming together and figuring something out. I
yeah,
think it'll
and
just
that's the
end in a
thing.
stalemate.
Right. And that's the interesting thing where it's like, um, sometimes we've seen teams like, do something like right at the end. Because we've seen it before. But, it just doesn't sound like there's a whole lot going on. So, at this point, but you never know. But like, you know, I'm not expecting like a home run move for anybody like in the last, 30 minutes. I mean, of course, if something happens, it would be pretty funny to react to like 30 seconds after I say it and then something happens, that would be hilarious. But I don't know. What is it? You know?
Yeah,
Like, and I'm sure New Orleans wants DeJounte Murray, but again, if Atlanta's wants a guy and you're not gonna do it, then like it's not gonna happen. And like again, if I'm New Orleans, do I want to give up Herb Jones just to get DeJounte Murray and Yucca Okongwu? Like, I don't know. Like, do I want to do that?
yeah. I was more so asking because I don't think he was getting moved, but if I were to pick one, it would be somewhere we haven't heard and surprise us. Yeah,
Right.
it
And that
would
was
be
and
somewhere
that
that could swoop in, but
right. And that was and that was the interesting thing was that like New Orleans was kind of the surprise team that came up, right? Because for the last several weeks, right, at this point, we had heard LA, and then I think Utah had come in recently. And then we also heard some, before, initially it was like what? It was like Knicks, Spurs, um, you know, Lakers, and then like recently, right, like the Jazz came in, and then the Pelicans came out of nowhere. Murray to the Clippers for PJ Tucker and a pack of Jolly Ranchers. Um,
Oh my god.
I don't think the salary works, but also like, does that? I mean, the Clippers don't need to do anything
I
major
think he
because their
was
team.
joking.
Yeah, I'm assuming he was joking. That would actually be really funny though. Like, I mean, if that were to happen, I mean, that would be insane. But I don't think the salary adds up, so
Yeah.
it'd be pretty funny though. But and then like even some of the teams at the top, like are you like if you're like the Nuggets, right? Yeah, jokes. Like if you're the Nuggets, um, like I guess you don't feel like you have to do a ton, but like when you think like maybe they would do like one thing to like maybe get like one extra veteran on the roster. Like I'm sure they
Maybe.
probably feel really good about where they're at anyways, but like, you know, I
Maybe,
wouldn't
but I
like you
mean, they
wouldn't
kind of just ran it back, and it's kind of worked so far. I
yeah.
mean, who would you really like give up? Like, I don't really
Yeah.
think you
Not
want to move on from Peyton Watson. I mean, I guess Hunter Tyson, but
no.
you just drafted Julian Strother, so it's like I don't know, Jalen Pickett
Yeah,
too.
no, I meant like maybe you could flip like, one of the other guys. Like maybe you could flip like, I don't know,
What, like Zeke
um
Naji or something?
Holiday, yeah, like Holiday or
Okay,
like Zeke, or Zeke Naji, like I don't, somebody, but like
maybe, but who wants those guys? That would be my question.
right, and
It
that's
all
the issue,
depends on their values, and it's like I don't think those
right?
guys' values were that
No,
high. And if you were to make a move, is that move going to help you improve by that much?
no,
Probably
but
not.
like
Like if you got
because
like a guy
again,
like Drummond, okay, but is Chicago really going to bite on that
yeah,
considering what you
that's
have? Probably not.
that's another guy where I don't understand why Chicago wouldn't just because again he's on a minimum deal,
Yeah,
like I mean like. Unless they're like, are they expecting to get like a first from Andre Drummond? It just doesn't make any
that
sense. Like,
makes no
the
sense.
Bulls, the Bulls are a team that we said should do, should kind of pull a Charlotte and just be
Yeah,
like, just move whoever you can, that a team would want. But they've done literally nothing,
yeah.
right? Like, I mean, other than
Caruso's
like,
off the board.
right, yeah, yeah, like they're not moving him, they're not moving DeRozan. Obviously, Levine, I don't think you're gonna move anyways because he's hurt. Um, but like, I'm just surprised, like like other than Kobe White, like who else on that team am I like, this guy has to stay,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, the
Because
only
like
guy I
Kobe
really
White,
feel good about is Kobe White.
yeah, like. And yeah, and that's insane. Like, I wonder if he might end up actually winning Most Improved, like ahead of Tyrese
That
Maxey,
that would be a
only
sleeper.
because like the tier that he was in before, where he was kind of like a scoring guard off the bench, but now
Hmm.
he's like a legitimately really good starting point guard.
Yeah, let's look at his numbers. So he went from averaging 9 points
Right.
to 19
Exactly.
on
Yeah.
46 from the field and 40 from three. That's
Yeah.
pretty
Like
good.
that's what I'm saying. Like, because we were talking about Tyrese Maxey was probably going to win it, and he might anyways. Because what was it? There was whatever year it was, Ja won it, right? And Ja was already good, but then he went from really good to like superstar good,
Right.
right? But then it's like with Kobe White, he went from literally like a bench guard to like a really good starting guard.
Yeah. And he started all 51 games that he's played in.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Like Kaminga maybe could be another guy. Because he's played pretty well as of late.
sure, sure.
But I don't know. Like it's just something I thought about because it's just like who would have expected that? Because like I think people liked Kobe White coming out of the draft, and I
Yeah,
think how he's playing now is maybe what people thought he could be, but like it
sure.
didn't feel like he was going to get there. But now he actually did get there.
Because I feel like he kind of like fell out of favor last year a little bit. I don't know, to me, because like in 74 games that he played, he only started in two. So, I think with the opportunity that he was given, he looked really good.
Right. So half hour left,
Yeah,
or a
it's still
little
nothing.
less
That's
than
what I'm
a half
saying.
hour left.
I don't think we're gonna get anything else, honestly.
Yeah, but I mean, we kind of have to keep going,
Yeah.
um, until it ends. So because I mean, you just never know. But yeah, like everything's completely dead quiet now. Because again, a lot of the stuff, that we thought might happen either has already happened or hasn't.
Yeah.
And like and then and you're starting to get some stuff that's saying like, oh, this may not happen anymore, right?
Right.
So like some teams are going to be closing up shop relatively soon.
Yeah. Shutting the phones off, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the
So,
last thing
I
we
mean,
got from Woj was the Pat Bev thing, and the last thing we got from Shams deadline related was, I guess, the Memphis reunion with Yuto Watanabe.
yeah, and then honestly, I completely forgot he played for Memphis.
Yeah, yeah,
Was that like his rookie year?
I believe so. Yeah,
Okay.
and then I think he got sent over to Brooklyn.
Hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we hadn't mentioned it yet, but like, what did you think of the All Star starter replacements?
Who was so it was Trey Young and Scotty Barnes.
Trey Young and Scotty Barnes.
Can't be too mad at it. I think Trey Young
Yeah,
was definitely on our list. Scotty, I don't think was on our list, but you
yeah,
can't be too mad at that.
that one was the one that surprised me.
Yeah,
I honestly didn't expect that.
me neither. Like, I guess if we look at his numbers,
I mean, he's been putting up good numbers. It's just the Raptors, since the team is, so bad. Like I just wouldn't have expected it. Like I would have assumed they may have just given it to like, and again, like, you can talk about how much should winning really impact like whether or not you're an all star because I don't
mhm,
think it necessarily should. It's just like you almost kind of feel like there wasn't anyone else,
yeah.
but
But I
like
mean,
at the
he
same
he did
time,
take a step in his game though. I'm looking at the numbers, like he's
right?
averaging
He's
20
been very
points,
good.
8 rebounds, 5 assists, um,
Yeah, he's been great.
almost
You know,
50 from
I'm
the
just
field, 36 from the three. So he finally got the three ball together, and that was something that we had talked about before the season started. We were like, all his success is gonna be contingent on if he can knock down the three, and he has so far.
right. Yeah. No, it is just kind of a funny thing.
Yeah.
Just because again, like, of the names that because we were talking, a while ago, about um, like the All Stars and like, who the replacements might be. And I don't think either of us brought up Scotty Barnes, did
Mm-mm.
we?
No, but
Yeah.
I feel low key like I feel like Scotty Barnes has had a better season than some of the guys that I mentioned. Like I think I mentioned Porzingis for an All Star replacement. It's like looking at the numbers. I think you feel a little bit better about Scotty's
Mhm. Yeah.
because I mean, looking at
Um,
it,
yeah,
Porzingis is
Woj,
averaging like 20.
yeah. Now Woj did mention on ESPN that the Hawks and the Raptors are still discussing DeJounte Murray and Bruce Brown deals. Like not together, but like just like in the sense of like they're still talking to teams about like, hey, and Bruce Brown was another name that we mentioned where it was like, you know,
I
oh
thought he would have
wow,
been one of the first people to go.
yeah, like and he still hasn't been moved.
Yeah, but I guess the Knicks kind of zagged and did the unexpected. So
Mhm. Yeah, but again, like I like the move for the Knicks. I think it makes sense because it's like
yeah,
we said, you know, two heads are better than one, particularly if like the two heads are not like especially like if the two heads are in a similar tier, right? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
for sure. Yeah, and they do similar things, but also can impact the game in different ways more than Bruce
Yeah.
Brown. I think.
Mhm. But I do think he can. But I still do think he can help a contender.
Absolutely. Let's see. Shams still quiet, and Woj still quiet. Let's look
Yeah, I
around the
mean,
home page.
yeah, I mean, 235. We got 25 minutes basically, and like still nothing. Like I know Chris Haynes, he put out like a thing because they asked Lillard about being teammates with Patrick Beverly,
Yeah, I see that.
but nothing else really significant.
Yeah, I do like the Pat Bev move though. Gives you that defense,
Yeah,
and that's what the
yeah, we
Bucks
talked.
needed. So they kind of addressed
Yeah,
the their needs halfway through.
right, exactly, and that's what we talked about. We're like, can you get a defensive, guard or wing? And like Beverly's not the same guy anymore. But again, given the assets they had, which was not really much of anything, like it's better than what they had before, right?
Yeah,
Like I would probably rather have Patrick Beverly than Cameron Payne, especially if I'm asking both of those guys to try to defend, rather ask Patrick Beverly to do that.
yeah.
And I guess that's it's a reunion, right? Because he played for Doc Rivers.
Mm-hmm. I think Minnesota also quietly did a nice deal with Monte Morris. We didn't really
Yeah,
touch on that too much, but I
yeah,
think
because
that
I
they
was,
did. They did. Yeah, they did do something special there because, like you said, we literally said on the podcast, like if you can't get Tyus Jones, get Monte Morris. Boom,
yeah,
and they did
and
that.
again, it's a guy that's been, in some big playoff games. He's played with other stars, so
Yeah,
it makes sense. Especially for what they want, what they need out of a point guard, because like, you don't need like a high scoring point guard. You just need a guy that can stabilize the offense because that's really their main issue.
yeah.
Yeah, now it's 2:37.
Hmm.
Um, still, still not really anything. Again, like, again, according to Shams, he's or Woj, right? He said that they're still looking. So I guess
Yeah,
it's possible, and that's why we did say like 5%, right? It's not like we said 0%
yeah,
because it's very rare that you have like a team with 0% chance of doing anything. Um, but I don't know. Like I don't see it. Like unless like in order for something like that to happen, like one of those teams would have to like come off of their asking price. You know what I mean?
sure.
Like, if the Hawks, if the Pelicans want DeJounte Murray, then like they're probably gonna have to, cede to whatever demands that Atlanta has. But if they're not, which I understand why they wouldn't, then they might not get him unless Atlanta again, unless the other side of the coin is if Atlanta decides to lower their asking price for
Yeah,
Murray.
and it is kind of intriguing because I think Dejounte Murray sat out on Wednesday, so um, a lot of people were speculating that he would be on the move, but it doesn't really look like it. But who knows? Maybe we get one of those last minute ones where the final 5 minutes of the deadline, Dejounte Murray to wherever,
Right. Yeah.
but doubt
So
it.
yeah, it just doesn't seem like it. But again, like, it does like again, I guess when I say like it doesn't make sense for Atlanta to trade, but it also like but I'm also like at the point where it's like how much are you really gonna get for him?
Yeah,
Because like I just don't think he's in a tier where teams are gonna up a lot to get him because I just don't think he's not in that caliber. He's not in that tier. You know what I mean? Like
for sure.
he's good, but you know, is he good enough where you're like, we got to move everything we can?
Right. Let's see.
Like, let's say, like say like from LA's perspective, right? Like if you wanted DeJounte Murray, like D'Lo for Murray, that swap, like if you're LA, that makes sense. But if it's like you have to give up Austin Reeves plus other stuff, like
No,
that doesn't make as much sense to me.
not at all.
And then again, like from New Orleans' perspective, um, you know, like if you're swap, but then it's like I don't think what is McCollum's contract? Because his contract is pretty large in comparison to Murray's, right? Like he's not on like a tiny deal, right? He's on like a relatively significant contract, right?
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, CJ McCollum makes 35, 36 million.
yeah,
So
yeah, it's a lot
so
of money.
so and that's where it would make sense if you're that's where it makes sense if you're the Pelicans, like if you get DeJounte Murray and a Kungwu, right? Because it wouldn't be enough,
Yeah,
right? It's kind of like what when we first heard, the Murray rumors with LA, where it was like if LA were to give up Austin Reeves, then maybe you also get an additional player from Atlanta. But then like even like with a Kungwu, like he makes 8 million. So it's
right.
like that puts you at 25, or whatever it is, 18 plus uh 8, right? So that puts you at like 25, 26, but like you're still a little ways away.
Yeah,
Now if it was like Murray and Capella, right? Well, that's different. But, again, like Murray and Capella for just McCollum, that would be kind of an L, I think, for Atlanta.
agreed.
Especially because McCollum's not on like a short-term deal, unless and then it's like is McCollum a better fit next to Trey Young than Dejounte Murray? I guess
Probably not,
offensively, I guess offensively maybe, but
but
like
defensively,
defensively,
no.
yeah, you still have the same problems that you do right now, and it's
Yeah.
worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, we're less than 20 minutes away now, and still nothing. So, this really could be something that goes down to the wire, but What do we expect? Like, do we think something's going down to the wire?
Like I said, I'm probably going to go with no. I think the deadline
Right.
is pretty much wrapped up at this point, but you can never rule out the fact that something could happen in the last 10 minutes, last 5
Yeah.
minutes even.
Yeah. Woj said the Hawks and Raptors are still discussing trades for Murray and Bruce Brown. Both decisions will come at the buzzer in 20 minutes.
Figured.
So it's very possible that it may go down to the wire and we may actually get something at like 3 right at the end or a little after 3 that like, oh, they actually did get traded after all.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. Like, if you couldn't come to a deal like now, I mean, like, I guess you could come to a deal at 3, but like, you know, is it going to be different than what it was? Like, I mean, than what it would have been if they had just done it now? I don't know.
But the thing is, like, the players that we're talking about, like, if I was a GM or in like the front office or something like that, none of these players like would entice me to have my hand forced, Like I wouldn't feel the pressure to be backed up into a wall and like make a stupid trade. So that's why I'm saying like I just don't think anybody's going to do anything stupid in the last like 5 minutes, but who knows, it could happen.
Right. Yeah, because in fairness, like, you're right, where it's like, from that perspective, does it make a whole lot of sense to go all in on any of these dudes?
Right.
You know, like,
Be
because
different if we're
again,
talking about a
there's not
star.
like you said what?
I said it'd be different if we were talking about like a superstar or a star, but
Right.
we're talking about DeJounte Murray and Bruce Brown here.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the interesting part. But I do kind of wonder, if anything happens like right at the end, because there's usually maybe one. Because if nothing happens, right, we would probably get something relatively close to 3 saying like, yeah, so and so team is done, or like, so and so team is not expected to make any moves, or like
Yeah.
talks for this player have ended or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
'cause that usually comes in because that happened last year, for certain guys, right? Because then we started hearing stuff about like, yeah, the Anunoby stuff fell through, or the Levine stuff fell through,
Yeah. Dang,
and I think,
I'm
yeah,
still in awe of the Mavs stuff. Like as more and more is coming out, and the more and more I'm thinking about it. Like Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington are both under contract for 3 seasons, including the rest of the season.
right,
Both are 25, so you've got them locked up for a decent amount of time.
yep, you got some solid young players, younger-ish players on
Yeah,
long-term deals,
for sure.
and you didn't have to give up anything like
Yeah,
of significance.
yeah,
Like,
that's the main reason why I like that
but
move.
isn't that funny though? Where it's like when they signed Grant Williams, like we liked it for Dallas,
Yeah,
and not at all did we expect them to like trade him.
I didn't think
And
they would move on from him in 1 season or less than
yeah,
a season.
right, exactly. Like it was barely more than half a season.
Yeah,
He's already been moved on from. So yeah, and like you said, and then for the Knicks, you also mentioned the other aspect of like they didn't even give up any of their firsts,
nope,
so they could easily put themselves in a position. I'm not saying they will, but like they could put themselves in a position of like, hey, let's get. Why can't we get Donovan Mitchell, or like why can't we
exactly,
get some other star, right? Because like
exactly.
they have all their firsts. Um, they no longer have like as many like enticing young guys, but they do have picks.
Yeah,
um and they'll have some contracts to probably move at different points as well, because like you could say to yourself like, yeah, we could, Bogdanovich, I think the last year of his deal next season is like not fully guaranteed, so they could talk, so like if they needed to move him they could add him to something in the off season.
yep.
And Sohan will replace Shaden Sharp in the Rising Stars game because Shaden Sharp, I think, had surgery
Okay,
for I think it's cool. Oh, we got a trade. The Spurs are trading Doug McDermott to the Pacers.
okay. That was a guy that
So
we
the
had
Spurs,
mentioned.
yeah. So this, yep, and that's if you're the Pacers, you got another shooter. In addition, so you got somebody to. He doesn't replace Buddy Hield because he's a different player, different position, but you did get a guy that can shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Um, So that's fine. I don't know what the Spurs are getting back. Um,
Pacers will send the Spurs a future 2nd-round pick.
okay, so it's like a salary dump, basically.
Yeah. I mean, you can't be
Okay.
too mad at that.
Yeah, no, I was just curious, because you just I was just interested because it's like we hadn't heard anything in a while, You know, it had gotten so quiet.
Yeah.
You know, now we did get something, you know, albeit a smaller move, but still something intriguing. And the Spurs were a team that, like you said, we talked about, you know, if they would move any of their guys. Um, Doug. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Xander Cade. Dougie McBuckets.
Yeah.
He's a
Dougie
pacer.
McDukas.
Yeah. I mean, you know, he's not. I mean, he
He's
ended up
okay.
not panning out in the way that I think people thought he would in the NBA.
Yeah.
But like he's still like a decent role player. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
again, he's a shooter, right? Doesn't do much else. Um, but you know, Indiana, like, you know, they've clearly committed themselves to like, you know, we want guys, you know, that can knock
Didn't he
down some
used to be
shots.
on Indiana? Or am I just
No, he definitely used to be a pacer. He
that's what
was
I
a
thought?
pacer.
Okay.
You are correct. I think he was a pacer the bubble year.
That's
And then
what
I
I
think
thought.
the year after that.
Yeah.
I don't remember how he got to San Antonio. I think he just left Indiana and got a contract from the Spurs.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so and you know, so I guess the Spurs got basically yep, so we just got something from Woj that the Hawks are keeping DeJounte Murray.
Figured.
And then we also said and so the Spurs are getting back Marcus Morris.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying like that once we get that, you know, because it said the Hawks are keeping DeJounte Murray. So there you go. That's
So DeJounte Murray is no longer on the trading block. Done
yep.
so. That'd be
So which is kind of what we thought, you know, may happen once we got closer to, you know, today. Because we thought he may get traded. But, you know, once this stuff kind of slowed down and then like, you know, all this time had passed and nothing happened, we were like, he's probably
all right. Now we just got to wait for the Bruce Brown notification.
yeah. And then because we have 12 minutes until 3 o'clock, and there are things that may happen after 3 o'clock. You know, like they'll have been completed before 3, but they may not be reported until after 3.
Right.
So, you know, we'll see. But yeah, so that's the player that the Spurs are getting, Marcus Morris. So he got flipped basically twice because he was
Yikes.
flipped from what was it, Philly to Indiana Philly to Indiana and now Indiana to San Antonio. It's funny, Keith Smith said all these years later Marcus Morris finally goes to the Spurs. Yeah, I remember that because wasn't it like he was gonna sign with the Spurs, he verbally committed, and then the Spurs made a move where I think they moved it was Davis Bertans in order to create the cap space to sign Morris.
Yep.
And then he didn't sign with the Spurs, he signed with the Knicks.
Yep.
So he reneged and then went to the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of interesting.
Well, what a way to pretty much end the trade deadline with
Yeah. And it said
going to
and they
Indiana.
put out the Hawks were wanting multiple first round picks and that offer never materialized. So like nobody's given up multiple first round picks for DeJounte Murray. It wasn't happening.
Not gonna happen.
So
bro.
that almost sounds like Atlanta just may not have been all that serious about, you know, going.
Yeah, they were just fielding offers and then
Yeah. And Sham said that Spurs are likely to buy out Marcus Morris. I don't know where he would go. I mean, he's I'm not gonna say he's cooked because he can have some games, every now and then. But he's not the same player that he was before. Obviously in a smaller role, right? He could probably be okay for a team. I mean, so let's see. This season he's averaging 7 points, 3 rebounds, 44 from the field, 40 from 3, which is nice. But yeah, so he could be a buyout guy. I just don't know specifically where he would go, right? I guess a
Yeah.
team that probably just needs another veteran forward.
Yeah.
But he's just a more offensive minded guy. So kind of interesting. Yeah, so we got less than 10 minutes and we already got the thing about DeJounte Murray's probably not going anywhere. So like you said, the last one is Bruce Brown, in terms of like, I guess
The Milwaukee Bucks are trading Robin Lopez to the Sacramento Kings. There you go, Zeke. There's your Kings move.
There you go, Zeke.
But then Lopez is expected to become to be waived and become a free agent. So there you go.
So that means that the Bucks. Let's see.
Who on earth would they be getting?
So the Bucks aren't getting anybody, right? Like if they're just trading them. But then the Kings are over the cap, so unless I don't know, is that like to create a roster spot?
It has to be. Could that mean Kuz?
No, I'm saying like I think Milwaukee would be creating a roster spot. Well, I guess the Bucks are sending cash in the deal, so I guess both
that'd be-
teams would open up a roster spot. I don't think you need to open up the roster spot for Kuz. I don't think he's getting traded. Like I think
Yeah.
he's staying in Washington. Like
Agreed.
at this point, I don't think any major deals are happening because like who else is on the board?
Yeah.
So I mean, because the only other guy is Bruce Brown. But that one is a little bit surprising to me. But again, I guess the issue is because he makes 20 million. And once the Knicks thing didn't happen, who else is left, right? Like because I know his name had been mentioned with LA, but like I don't think that would make any sense to trade, like D'Lo for Bruce Brown. Like
No.
to me personally,
No.
in my opinion, I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby Marks said the trade opens up a roster spot for Milwaukee and saves 8.6 million toward the luxury tax. So that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about where like some of these teams may move a guy to open up, to get away from the luxury tax.
Yeah.
So I mean, and some of these guys will hit the buyout market, but like how many of these guys are like really that great? Like is Robin Lopez really like good anymore?
Right.
I mean, he wasn't even playing for Milwaukee, so
Yeah. Do we think DeJounte Murray's gonna get traded in the offseason, maybe?
I mean, maybe, but I guess my issue is that if he wasn't moved now, right? Like I don't see a team that's like, let's get him in the offseason, right? Because like say the Lakers, right? Their quote unquote plan is to use their draft picks and trade for a star in the offseason, right? So that would presumably mean that they would want somebody better than DeJounte Murray. And then like maybe New Orleans would revisit that. But like again, I would think it would make more sense if you really wanted DeJounte Murray, you would do it now.
Sure.
So that's the thing. If nobody wanted him now when he was making less, I don't think they're gonna want him more when he makes more money. Like I don't think the offers really changed. Like if no team was willing to give up multiple firsts right now for him, are they gonna give up multiple firsts in the offseason? Like I just don't buy it.
Yeah.
Like Atlanta's probably either stuck with him or they may just have to hope and pray that something crazy happens where like somebody does trade for him in the offseason. I don't see it. Like because in the offseason, if there are other stars that will ask out, he'll be towards the back of the line.
Yeah. Somebody said the Bucks are getting worse at the deadline. I don't really agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they didn't really get much better. I mean, they added Patrick Beverly, and I guess Patrick Beverly's an upgrade from Cameron Payne. But, did they really make the improvements that make you feel like that much different about them? Like, I would say probably not.
Yeah. Staying the same for me.
Yeah.
But
like
you did get better defense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they got better. They got better, I guess, by adding Patrick Beverly as opposed to Cameron Payne. I just don't necessarily feel like it's that significantly better. Like he's a much better. He's better defensively, but you're still going to have other issues where it's like he's a smallish guard, so he's going to, so there's going to be certain guys that he's just going to struggle with,
Yep.
like. But at the same time, he'll still help probably. Like he'll be better than Cameron Payne, who wasn't really playing at all, and when he was playing, he wasn't helping much.
To avoid a 1.5 million upcoming contract
Wow,
bonus for games played.
Gonna get waived. Wow.
Okay. Well,
That's not at all what I thought.
me
So-
neither, but that opens up, I guess, not like
That means-
roster, but like
Right. It's more so that means Dinwiddie could be a guy that a team could pick up on the buyout market.
yeah,
Right. And it's like you'd rather have him for like a minimum or an exception or whatever than nothing. And I think his contract, right, was at a level where I'm going to assume that like the second apron teams couldn't sign him.
Yeah.
But I guess the question is, but it could be somewhat of a risk because he wasn't playing well for Brooklyn. So how much of that was him just not wanting to be there versus like, is he just a worse player now than he was?
Right.
Because like he had some good moments for Dallas. I mean, he's not
Agreed.
a perfect player by any means, but like, the version of Dinwiddie we're seeing this year is a lot worse than what we have, seen from him, in the couple of seasons prior, right? Like he
Woj
wasn't
just
great.
tweeted something else. 76ers are trading Jaden Springer to the Celtics for a second round pick.
Okay. So
The small
that
stuff is
probably,
coming in a flurry. Okay.
yeah. So that's another thing where it's like it gives you a second and it opens up a roster spot
Yeah.
unless Boston exchanges a player with them.
Okay.
So Philly looks like they're probably also going to try to get Bob Market. Maybe they try to get Spencer Dinwiddie. I don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of wild. Spencer Dinwiddie was on track to make $20 million this year.
Yeah, I did not. He's definitely not a guy I expected to get bought out. But but it is what it is. But the main thing is that I think if he can get back to what he was doing in Dallas, something close to that, because that was like the last time he was pretty good.
Yeah.
Because he fell off once he went back to Brooklyn, but in Dallas he was pretty good because he averaged 18 a game. So when he was traded there the first time, he averaged 16 and 4 off the bench, shooting 50 from the field and 40 from three. And then the stretch when he was traded from Dallas back to Brooklyn, right? That was the Kyrie deal. He averaged 18 and 5, and he started for them.
Okay.
So if he can do something close to what he was doing in Dallas, so if you can get the good version of Spencer Dinwiddie, that's great, right? Like especially like if you get him for nothing. Now, if you get the bad version that was in Brooklyn, that's a problem.
Right.
So the question is, what version of Dinwiddie are you getting? If you're a team, and then also where does he go? Where is he a good fit? So like what team needs potentially like a backup point guard?
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's probably a starter. You know what I mean? Like he started for Dallas. He started for Dallas, last season before they traded for Kyrie, but I don't think he's a starting point guard. So, I guess, from your vantage point, like where do you think would be like a really good fit for him?
Yeah.
Like do you have like a team in mind that you think like would be good for him?
Philly, I think that would be intriguing.
Mhm.
Let me look around. There's some more. Right now, I would say Philly. Maybe a team like. I don't think Miami would work. I'm just gonna go with Philly, honestly. Maybe if I look in the West, Denver, maybe. I don't know if they have enough roster spots. Phoenix, that would be another one.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I would
hadn't
go.
even
I would
thought
go
of
with Philly and Phoenix.
Mhm. Yeah, because like if you're Phoenix and you got him as a backup point guard, I mean he's a scorer. He's not like a traditional playmaking point
Right.
guard, but it's still more talent. All right, so we got from Woes the Raptors are keeping Bruce Brown Jr.
Okay. Well, that's all she wrote.
Yeah, and then also they said, yeah, Bulls have made Alex Caruso untouchable
Yep.
in trade talks. So
Figured.
yeah, so don't know what the Bulls are doing.
Yeah.
Don't understand it at all.
Play and push.
And
That's
I guess
the only thing that I can think of.
yeah, and I guess the Clippers didn't move PJ Tucker. But either way, like it's not like the Clippers are like, oh man, you know what I mean? Like they're still really good. Like
Yeah.
Obviously that's the difference between like being really good and being like potentially like the favorites.
Yeah.
So, but either way, yeah, and so the trade deadline has passed. It is after 3. We're gonna go a little bit longer. Obviously just in case something happens. I don't know how much longer you want to go, but
I'm good till like 305, 310, but that's your decision.
Yeah, because obviously the thing is deals, as long as they're completed before 3, that works. So we may get some stuff, come out after, obviously. All right, so let's see. Like we just got one. The Celtics are trading Delano Banton to the Portland Trail Blazers for a heavily protected second round pick.
Who broke that Woj?
Yeah. So that's I think that was the guard that used to play for the Raptors, right? That was like
Mm-hmm.
he's like a big guard or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but again, very small deal, right? The fact that like basically like at this point, because Bruce Brown and Murray were not dealt, there's no one else that's left that's like a game changer, unless there's like somebody I'm not thinking of.
Yeah. It's
You know what I
intriguing that
mean?
the Celtics made some moves. That's good.
Yeah, and so I guess because they brought in Springer and then they moved Banton and they got they gave up a second to Philly and got a second from Portland. So
Yeah.
I guess that opens up a roster spot for them. So maybe
Yeah.
they might try to see if there's anybody in the buyout market. Yeah, let's see. Woe said the $23 million team option on Brown's 24-25 contract gives the Raptors a lot of options in the offseason. I mean, sure. I mean, I understand it like from the perspective of like you could decline the option and then like re-sign him to like a short term but like less expensive deal, which would probably make him easier to trade. Or you could
Right.
accept it, and he's an expiring as opposed to like, potential expiring. But yeah, sure. Let's see. The Bulls haven't made a trade involving a player since August 2021. That's 30 months and counting without a deal. Yeah, Chris Haynes said that we're not going to trade Drummond either, which is interesting. Um, and there were also multiple teams that literally did not make a single move. Like even like because I even said like say for LA. Wow, Isaac said just got back W trade. You
Yeah.
talking about the Lopez one?
I don't know what he's talking about. Which one are you talking about, bro? Because there were
Yeah,
about, I
but
think, 3 or 4 that happened while you were gone.
but there were multiple teams that literally did not do anything.
Yeah.
Like even like LA, I thought that they would move somebody to like get closer out of the luxury tax. They didn't even move anybody.
Mm-mm.
So, maybe they go after Dinwiddie. But again, like and then say like the Warriors, they didn't do anything. Um, so yeah, I mean there were a number of teams that did basically nothing.
Yeah.
So there were still a lot of moves though, for sure. You know what I mean? Like there were definitely a lot more moves, maybe a little more than we thought. There were guys that we thought, dude, I only care about the Kings. Yeah, so
You
he's
didn't
talking about
even
Robert.
get anything, dude. You waved
Well, they
him.
got him. Yeah, well, yeah. So I mean, I guess like if Bruce Brown and Dejounte Murray are off the board, that pretty much means that no one else major is probably going to get moved. Because a lot of people now are saying like the trade deadline is officially over, probably because it's after 3. But I don't think anybody else is going to get moved. So I guess
Warriors are
we'll.
trading Corey Joseph to the Pacers.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. Warriors
So
made a move.
okay, so there you go. So that's a luxury tax one, I think, right? Or they're in the second apron, but it still frees up money.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's actually
so
smart by them.
yeah, it frees up money, and I guess it in theory also opens up a roster spot,
Technically, yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So but at the same time, I guess for them, like their hope is probably like, we'll get we'll get back Chris Paul. Kuminga is playing well. Maybe Wiggins and Clay have like a better close to the season. So, like that's probably their thought process. And also I just think again, they probably didn't like any of the offers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so but I think now I guess the next step is pretty much the buyout market. So,
Yeah.
but again, are there that many crazy guys that are available?
Not too many, I think, but I would definitely say Dinwiddie's probably one of the big ones.
He's probably the biggest one. It's just again, it's a matter of if whoever gets him, what version of him are they getting? Because are you getting the Brooklyn version or are you getting the Dallas version? Because the Dallas version is much more of a game changer, and the Brooklyn one is not so much. So
I think the
yeah.
buyout deadline is what, March 1st?
So March 1st, I think, is the last day that somebody can be bought out and join a contender.
Okay, gotcha.
Like for the playoffs. So like technically, like so if a team wanted to troll, they could buy out a guy on March 2nd,
Okay.
and he'll be a free agent, but he can't join a playoff run.
Okay.
Like he could be on a team but not be eligible for a playoff run. So like, nobody would probably really do that. But
No, no, no.
March 1st is the last day that a guy can get bought out. I mean, so not everybody's going to get bought out immediately because some guys will probably negotiate how much money they'll be willing to give up. And then
Mhm.
some guys are probably going to try to decide whether or not they want to get bought out.
Yeah.
Dinwiddie's thing is a little bit different because he got waived, which is different than a buyout because waived is not, because usually a buyout is more like a mutual agreement,
Mhm.
whereas a waive is just like,
You're
we're
getting
getting rid
cut.
of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Like
getting cut.
Killian
So
Hayes.
that's a little bit, yeah, exactly. So that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, like at this point, like I guess like the trade deadline is pretty much over,
Mhm.
right? I mean, again, there may be some small stuff. Um, but after that, it's pretty much wraps, right?
Yeah. Pacers
So
sent out a second round pick to the Warriors for Joseph and Cash.
okay, so that means the Pacers wanted Corey Joseph.
Yeah. I,
That's interesting.
I didn't really know he had a lot of value, but hey, at least the Warriors
Yeah,
get a
'cause they
second
already,
round pick.
yeah. So there you go. So that's something. And again, like I guess that frees up some money because they have a very expensive roster.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah. So I mean, like, since the big boys aren't getting moved, that we're left, right? We might as well probably get ready to close out the live stream, and
Sure.
kind of prep for, like obviously we'll do our, regular episode that'll come out on Friday, which will have like a more detailed, like less free
Yeah.
flowing, discussion of the trade deadline,
It'll be more in
the
depth.
fallout. Yeah, more in depth than, some of the fallout from that. But we
Yeah.
still appreciate everybody who showed up, for the stream and participated in the chat. Again, that's why the live streams are really fun. Because it's nice to be able to interact with the crowd as opposed to kind of just like, just talking for like multiple hours, because it gets a
Exactly.
little bit,
Yeah, and we appreciate everybody who showed up in the chat, interacted with us, had a good conversation. There were some funny comments. There was a little bit of beef here and there, but shout out to every
yep.
single one of you guys. And like he said, we're going to be recording tonight, and there'll be a new episode out tomorrow. And then also we'll have an announcement in that episode regarding our Discord. So we'll have the link ready to be shared for tomorrow. And yeah, thank you once again for everybody who showed up. It was an interesting deadline, and we'll be covering that in our episode for tomorrow. And we're probably going to head out of here, man.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for showing out, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.